And staying with the cartels, the United States has significantly increased its surveillance of Mexican drug cartels, not just at the southern border, but even deep inside Mexico.
They thought they could take on America's best? Think again. When cartel thugs aimed at a U.S. fighter jet patrolling the border, they had no idea what was coming. The Voyager mission turned from routine to revenge in seconds. What happened next left the cartel scrambling for cover as military might rain down from above. This shocking showdown at the border has everyone talking. The cartel's daring move became their worst nightmare. The shocking border attack that changed everything. It started as a normal patrol mission along the U.S.-Mexico border. An F-16 fighter jet cruised at 20,000 feet, part of increased security operations targeting cartel activities. The sun was setting over the desert landscape when something unthinkable happened. Cartel members, hiding among the rocky terrain below, opened fire on the American military aircraft. This wasn't just a few random shots. Intelligence reports later confirmed it was a coordinated attack using modified high-powered rifles and at least one heavy machine gun. The bullets had no chance of bringing down the jet, but the message was clear. The cartels were directly challenging U.S. military power. Border residents reported hearing rapid gunfire followed by the roar of jet engines as the F-16 swooped lower to identify the threat. The pilot, a decorated Air Force veteran with thousands of flight hours, immediately recognized the danger and executed evasive maneuvers while alerting command. Within seconds, the aircraft's advanced systems captured everything: exact locations, heat signatures, and even faces of those involved. The cartel members fled in vehicles, thinking they had made their point without consequences. They couldn't have been more wrong. This single act of aggression would trigger one of the most massive anti-cartel operations in history. Local news stations broke regular programming as the story spread. The attack represented an unprecedented escalation. Drug cartels had harassed Border Patrol agents before, even shot at police helicopters, but directly targeting a military jet was crossing a red line that would bring the full might of American power down on their operations. For years, cartels had operated with a certain level of impunity in border regions. That era ended the moment they fired on that F-16. Within hours, military vehicles began pouring into border communities, and residents witnessed more aircraft circling overhead than they'd ever seen before. Inside the fighter jet during the attack, the F-16 Fighting Falcon, one of America's most lethal fighter jets, was performing a routine surveillance mission that fateful afternoon. With a top speed exceeding 1,500 miles per hour and advanced weapon systems, it's a formidable aircraft designed for combat situations far more intense than border patrol. The pilot was monitoring cartel movement patterns when warning systems suddenly flashed inside the cockpit. Specialized sensors detected muzzle flashes from the ground below. Within milliseconds, the jet's defensive systems pinpointed the exact location of the attackers using thermal imaging and radar. The attack happened so quickly that most pilots would have barely registered what was happening, but years of intensive training kicked in immediately. The pilot executed a sharp banking maneuver while activating the aircraft's suite of surveillance equipment. The F-16's cameras zoomed in on the attackers, capturing crystal-clear images despite being thousands of feet in the air. These images would later prove crucial in identifying the cartel members involved. The aircraft's advanced radar system mapped the entire area, tracking vehicles leaving the scene at high speed. Meanwhile, the jet's electronic warfare package secretly intercepted radio communications and cell phone signals from the panicking attackers below. All of this information transmitted instantly to command centers across the country. Military response protocols activated automatically. What the cartel didn't understand was that this wasn't just any aircraft. It was essentially a flying intelligence center with capabilities far beyond what they could imagine. The F-16's onboard computers calculated trajectory angles of the incoming fire, confirming this was a deliberate attack rather than random shots. Even as the pilot maintained perfect composure through evasive maneuvers, the aircraft's systems were building a comprehensive intelligence picture that would prove devastating to cartel operations. The entire engagement lasted less than 3 minutes, but the consequences would echo for years to come. The cartel's fatal miscalculation. For years, the Sinaloa cartel had been expanding its control over key border crossing points. Recent leadership changes had brought more aggressive commanders to the region, ones who believed intimidation could push back against increased American border security. Their plan to fire on a military aircraft seemed bold in cartel war rooms, a show of force to demonstrate their fearlessness. In reality, it was perhaps the worst strategic blunder in modern cartel history. The cartel leadership had fundamentally misunderstood American military response protocols. They expected perhaps increased border patrol presence or, at most, a localized law enforcement response. What they triggered instead was a full-scale military and federal operation with resources beyond imagination. Intelligence reports later revealed the cartel had been watching aircraft patterns for weeks. They specifically chose to target an F-16, thinking it was merely for show, a psychological intimidation tactic by American forces. This catastrophic intelligence failure revealed how little they understood about the aircraft's capabilities or the response such an attack would generate. Within hours of the attack, cartel lieutenants received frantic calls from senior leadership ordering immediate evacuation of safe houses and destruction of evidence. But it was already too late. The F-16 systems had mapped their escape routes, identified vehicles, and even captured biometric data sufficient for identification. Signals intelligence had already compromised their communication networks. Phone calls between cartel members revealed growing panic as they realized the magnitude of their mistake. What they intended as a bold message instead exposed their entire regional operation to unprecedented scrutiny. The cartel's decision to fire upon a U.S. military F-16 marked their greatest strategic blunder in decades. Believing they could intimidate American forces, they instead triggered an unprecedented response. Within hours, their entire operation faced the full might of U.S. military technology and intelligence capabilities. Their network of safe houses, smuggling routes, and corrupt contacts, built over years, was exposed in minutes by the aircraft's advanced surveillance systems. As military forces descended on their locations, panic spread through cartel ranks. What they intended as a show of strength became their undoing, revealing a fundamental misunderstanding of American military capabilities and resolve. The cartel had spent years building smuggling routes, corrupting officials, and establishing safe houses throughout the border region. In a single miscalculated moment, they had put all of it at risk. Even worse, they had united American and Mexican authorities against them in a way previously thought impossible, creating a perfect storm that would dismantle their operation piece by piece. The lightning-fast military response. The minutes following the attack on the F-16 triggered a security response unlike anything the border region had ever witnessed. Emergency action protocols designed for terrorist attacks activated instantly. The first wave of response came from the air. 4 additional F-16s scrambled from nearby Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, creating continuous air coverage over the border region. These aircraft carried advanced surveillance packages specifically designed to track fleeing vehicles and individuals. Within 30 minutes, Black Hawk helicopters carrying elite Army Rangers were airborne, heading directly to secure possible escape routes. These special operators, trained for high-risk missions, deployed in teams across the region using night vision and thermal imaging to detect any movement. Border Patrol rapidly established vehicle checkpoints on every road within 100 miles of the attack site. Meanwhile, Predator drones diverted from other missions created an unblinking eye in the sky, their high-resolution cameras capable of reading license plates from 20,000 feet. Coordination centers lit up with activity as intelligence from multiple agencies flowed in. Satellite imagery was retasked to focus on the region, providing real-time updates on vehicle movements across the rugged landscape. The speed and scale of the response overwhelmed cartel lookouts and scouts. Their usual warning systems proved useless against the military-grade technology suddenly focused on their operation. By nightfall, specialized equipment had tracked heat signatures into remote desert areas where cartel members sought refuge in previously secure locations. These hiding spots, never before compromised, suddenly appeared on military monitors as bright thermal outlines. When cartel gunmen opened fire on the U.S. fighter jet, they triggered a military response of unprecedented speed and scale. Within minutes, emergency protocols activated across multiple branches. 4 additional F-16s scrambled from nearby bases, creating continuous air coverage while Black Hawk helicopters deployed elite Army Rangers to secure escape routes. Border Patrol established checkpoints on every road within 100 miles as Predator drones provided unblinking surveillance from above. Satellite imagery was immediately retasked, tracking heat signatures across the rugged landscape. By nightfall, Special Forces had surrounded identified compounds, their thermal imaging equipment revealing hidden cartel members. The operation seamlessly integrated intelligence from dozens of agencies, creating a perfect dragnet. What normally would require months of planning unfolded in hours, overwhelming cartel communication networks and neutralizing their escape options before they realized the magnitude of their mistake. Communications intelligence units intercepted frantic messages between cartel members as they realized escape routes were being systematically cut off. Within just 4 hours, a complete security perimeter had been established around a 50-mile section of border. For the first time, drug traffickers faced not just law enforcement, but the full combined capabilities of the American military and intelligence community. The response sent shockwaves through cartel ranks as they realized they had awakened a sleeping giant. The massive cartel takedown operation. The pre-dawn raids happened simultaneously across 3 states. Months of planning compressed into hours as elite units moved on identified targets. The primary compound, a sprawling ranch 12 miles north of the border, had served as a cartel command center for years. At precisely 5:30 a.m., Special Forces operators breached the perimeter using tactics developed in Iraq and Afghanistan. Thermal imaging had already mapped every person inside the buildings. The main house fell without a single shot fired. Cartel members, still half asleep, found themselves surrounded by operators in full tactical gear. The evidence discovered inside stunned even veteran agents. Maps detailed smuggling routes across 4 states. Ledgers contained names of corrupted officials. Most alarming was a stockpile of military-grade weapons, including rocket-propelled grenades and anti-aircraft guns. Evidence the cartel had been preparing for escalated conflict. 15 miles away, a second team raided a warehouse that served as a distribution center. The operation yielded 2 tons of cocaine, 1 million fentanyl pills, and over 50 undocumented migrants held in deplorable conditions. Computer systems seized from the location contained financial records that would eventually lead to the freezing of over $50 million in cartel assets. The third target, an upscale suburban house in Phoenix, yielded the biggest prize: Francisco El Halcon Ramirez, regional cartel lieutenant responsible for border operations. His capture represented the highest-ranking cartel figure apprehended on U.S. soil in over a decade. Ramirez had been living in plain sight, his children attending American schools, while he directed violent operations across the Southwest. Pre-dawn raids struck simultaneously across 3 states, the culmination of intelligence gathered within hours of the fighter jet attack. At a sprawling ranch compound 12 miles north of the border, Special Forces operators breached the perimeter using tactics refined in Middle Eastern conflicts. Inside, they discovered an intelligence goldmine: maps detailing smuggling routes, ledgers naming corrupted officials, and military-grade weapons stockpiles. A secondary warehouse raid yielded 2 tons of cocaine, 1 million fentanyl pills, and dozens of trafficking victims. The biggest prize came at an upscale Phoenix suburb where authorities captured Francisco El Halcon Ramirez, the highest-ranking cartel lieutenant apprehended on U.S. soil in a decade. In total, the operation netted 43 cartel operatives, including 7 from the FBI's most wanted list. Evidence gathered revealed extensive plans for expanded operations across the Southwest. The raids effectively decapitated the cartel's regional leadership structure, disrupting operations for months to come. In total, the raids netted 43 cartel operatives, including 7 on the FBI's most wanted list. The evidence gathered painted a picture of an organization that had grown increasingly bold over years of operational success. Documents revealed plans for expanded operations, including targeting more government officials for corruption. The raids effectively decapitated cartel leadership across the entire border region, creating a power vacuum that would disrupt operations for months to come. The high-tech advantage that sealed their fate. What the cartel never comprehended was the technological gap between their operations and U.S. military capabilities. The F-16 they targeted wasn't just a fast airplane, it represented the peak of American reconnaissance technology. The moment bullets flew toward the aircraft, a cascade of automated systems activated. The jet's AESA radar instantly recorded the exact coordinates of the attackers, while specialized cameras captured high-resolution images of faces, vehicles, and weapons. These images underwent immediate processing through military-grade facial recognition software, matching against databases of known cartel members within seconds. Heat signature analysis identified the specific weapons used by their thermal output patterns. Even more devastating was the electronic warfare package aboard the F-16. Without their knowledge, the cartel members' cell phones, radio communications, and electronic devices were compromised the moment they came within range of the aircraft. Every call made after the attack was recorded and analyzed by artificial intelligence systems that matched voice patterns to known cartel figures. This signal's intelligence proved particularly damaging, as panicked cartel members inadvertently revealed locations of safe houses and names of associates. Satellite technology retasked to focus on the region provided continuous monitoring of all movement in a 100-mile radius. When suspects fled in vehicles, these satellites tracked them to previously unknown locations, expanding the intelligence map of cartel operations. Military-grade drones with thermal imaging capabilities identified hidden underground bunkers by detecting subtle temperature differences in the desert floor, revealing storage locations that had evaded detection for years. Perhaps most impressive was the data fusion happening behind the scenes. The cartel's fundamental miscalculation was underestimating American military technology. The F-16 they targeted wasn't merely a combat aircraft, but a flying intelligence center. The moment bullets flew toward it, advanced systems activated. AESA radar pinpointed exact coordinates, while specialized cameras captured high-resolution images instantly processed through military-grade facial recognition. Heat signature analysis identified specific weapons by their thermal patterns. Most devastating was the electronic warfare package that silently compromised all cartel communications within range. Cell phones, radios, and electronic devices became intelligence assets, with AI systems matching voice patterns to known cartel figures. Satellite technology retasked to the region provided continuous monitoring across a 100-mile radius, tracking fleeing vehicles to previously unknown locations. Thermal imaging drones detected underground bunkers by identifying subtle temperature variations in the desert floor. This technological overmatch meant the cartel was effectively defeated the moment they fired their first shot, though they wouldn't realize it until raids began. Artificial intelligence systems combined information from dozens of sources, from border sensors to financial transactions, creating a comprehensive picture of cartel operations that would have taken human analysts months to compile. This technological overmatch meant the cartel was effectively defeated the moment they fired the first shot, though they wouldn't realize it until raids began. Border communities celebrate new freedom. For residents of towns along the border, the massive anti-cartel operation brought an immediate sense of relief that quickly turned to celebration. Communities that had lived under the shadow of cartel intimidation for years suddenly found themselves free from fear. In Eagle Pass, Texas, residents gathered spontaneously in the town square as news spread of the cartel leaders' arrests. Many brought photos of loved ones lost to cartel violence over the years. The atmosphere shifted from solemn remembrance to joyful hope as people realized the reign of terror might truly be ending. Local businesses that had been paying protection money immediately noticed the absence of weekly cartel collectors. Restaurant owners reported record crowds as families felt safe dining out after dark for the first time in years. Parks that had stood empty due to safety concerns suddenly filled with children playing. School attendance jumped dramatically in the days following the operation. Principals reported that students who had stopped attending due to safety concerns suddenly returned to classrooms. Teachers noted improved concentration from children no longer distracted by fear. After years living under cartel shadows, border communities experienced immediate transformation following the massive military operation. Residents spontaneously gathered in town squares as news spread of cartel arrests. Local businesses no longer faced weekly extortion payments. Parks, once empty due to safety concerns, filled with playing children. School attendance jumped dramatically as families felt safe again. Restaurant owners reported record crowds as people ventured out after dark. Property values increased 30% within weeks as families who had fled returned home. Tourism rebounded to pre-cartel levels, revitalizing local economies. After years of darkness, these communities finally experienced normal life without constant fear and intimidation. The psychological impact rippled through every aspect of community life. Mental health professionals observed an immediate decrease in anxiety-related symptoms among patients. Community events that had been canceled for years due to security concerns were hastily organized. Weekend markets returned to town squares, and evening church services resumed their normal schedules. Perhaps most telling were the property values. Real estate agents reported a 30% increase in home prices within weeks as families who had fled began returning to the region. Tourism, which had collapsed under cartel violence, showed immediate signs of revival. Hotels reported bookings reaching pre-cartel levels within a month of the operation. The economic impact spread beyond tourism as legitimate cross-border trade flourished without cartel interference. Unemployment rates dropped as businesses expanded operations no longer hindered by extortion or violence. After years of darkness, border communities began experiencing something that had seemed impossible: normal life without the constant shadow of cartel intimidation. The unprecedented international cooperation. The attack on an American military aircraft created a diplomatic situation unlike any before it. Mexican officials, often hesitant about joint operations that might appear to compromise sovereignty, responded with unprecedented cooperation. Within hours of the attack, Mexican special forces secured the southern side of the border, preventing cartel members from escaping into Mexico. This marked a dramatic shift in cross-border relations. The Mexican government deployed naval vessels to patrol coastal escape routes while providing access to intelligence networks that had infiltrated cartel operations years earlier. Mexican military helicopters joined American aircraft in maintaining aerial surveillance of remote areas. This coordination extended beyond military operations. Financial investigators from both countries worked together to freeze cartel assets across multiple banking systems. Mexican prosecutors fast-tracked extradition requests that normally would have taken months or years to process. Behind this shift was growing recognition in Mexico City that cartel violence had reached unacceptable levels. Recent attacks on journalists, politicians, and civilians had pushed public opinion strongly in favor of decisive action. Economic factors also played a major role in this cooperation. Tourism, a critical sector of the Mexican economy, had suffered badly from cartel violence. Business leaders had been pressuring the government for stronger security measures that would restore international confidence. The diplomatic breakthrough extended beyond immediate security operations. New agreements established permanent joint intelligence centers along the border where agents from both countries could share information in real time. Training programs allowed Mexican forces to access American technological capabilities previously unavailable to them. Perhaps most significant was the political messaging from both governments. Rather than the typical finger-pointing about who was responsible for drug trafficking, leaders emphasized shared responsibility and mutual benefits of cooperation. This new framework survived even political transitions, suggesting a fundamental shift rather than temporary alignment. International observers noted this cooperation could become a model for other regions facing transnational criminal organizations. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime sent representatives to study the new operational framework for potential implementation elsewhere. What began as a response to an attack evolved into a new paradigm for international security cooperation. The justice system's overwhelming case. The federal courthouse in San Antonio transformed into a fortress as the first cartel members appeared for arraignment. The evidence assembled against them represented one of the most comprehensive criminal cases in American history. Prosecutors unveiled a 350-page indictment containing charges that went far beyond the aircraft attack. The foundation of the case came directly from the F-16's recording systems. High-definition video showed cartel members firing on the aircraft from multiple angles. Advanced audio filtering isolated their voices, providing identification that would prove impossible to dispute in court. Ballistic evidence retrieved from the scene matched weapons found in subsequent raids. Digital forensics teams recovered deleted messages from seized phones and computers, revealing planning discussions that stretched back months. The case expanded far beyond the initial attack. Financial records discovered during the raids exposed complex money laundering operations involving seemingly legitimate businesses across 5 states. Customer lists from drug operations implicated corrupt officials who had protected cartel activities for years. Human trafficking victims provided testimony about their experiences, adding charges that carried additional life sentences. The most damaging evidence came from cartel members themselves. Facing overwhelming evidence and potential life sentences, 7 mid-level operatives agreed to testify against their superiors in exchange for reduced sentences. Their insider testimony revealed organizational structures, financing methods, and connections to international suppliers. Federal prosecutors assembled the case methodically, creating airtight connections between physical evidence, digital records, and witness testimony. Legal experts described it as leaving no room for reasonable doubt. The broader impact on the justice system extended beyond this single case. New precedents were established for using military-grade intelligence in civilian prosecutions. Evidence-gathering techniques pioneered during the operation became templates for future cases against organized crime. Most significantly, the case rebuilt public confidence in the government's ability to confront powerful criminal organizations and win decisively. The trials themselves became a national spectacle, with media coverage highlighting both the sophistication of cartel operations and the even more impressive capabilities of American law enforcement. The new era of border security. 6 months after the attack, the border region had transformed beyond recognition. What began as a response to a single incident evolved into a complete reimagining of border security. The visible changes were immediately apparent. New observation towers equipped with advanced radar systems now detected unauthorized crossings miles before they reached American soil. These towers, linked to artificial intelligence systems, could distinguish between wildlife migrants and potential smugglers based on movement patterns alone. Underground sensors detected tunnel-digging operations that would have gone unnoticed before. Aerial surveillance became constant but nearly invisible. New ultra-quiet drones could remain airborne for days, their high-resolution cameras covering vast areas without being detected from the ground. These drones operated on artificial intelligence systems that identified suspicious behavior and alerted human operators only when necessary. Perhaps most significant was the shift toward intelligence-driven operations. Rather than reacting to cartel movements, authorities now infiltrated their command structures through digital means and human sources. This proactive approach disrupted operations before they began. The economic impact spread throughout the region. With cartels on the defensive, legitimate cross-border commerce flourished. Wait times at legal crossing points decreased while trade volume increased by 15%. Border communities reported declining unemployment as businesses returned to areas previously considered too dangerous. The psychological effect extended far beyond the border itself. National polls showed American confidence in border security reached its highest point in 2 decades. Tourism to border states rebounded sharply, with visitors no longer deterred by fear of violence. Property values in previously cartel-dominated areas jumped significantly as safety improved. Law enforcement agencies nationwide adopted lessons learned from the operation. New technologies and tactics proven effective against cartels were implemented in jurisdictions facing gang activity or organized crime. Training programs incorporated case studies from the operation. The most telling indicator came from the cartels themselves. Intelligence sources reported groups shifting operations away from the border, focusing instead on less defended routes through the Caribbean. Their myth of invincibility shattered by the overwhelming response to their biggest tactical error, the day they decided to fire on an American fighter jet.
A pirate crew thought they'd hit the jackpot. A massive ship drifting silently through the Gulf of Aden. No lights, no flag, no escorts, just a tempting shadow in the dark. To the cartel-backed pirates, it looked like an easy target, and so they took off after it. What they didn't know was that this wasn't some helpless freighter. It was the last ship they ever wanted to mess with. Behind that massive silhouette was a fully loaded, nuclear-powered U.S. aircraft carrier. And by the time they realized it, they weren't making a getaway, and they were praying for one. What happened next in those dark waters? And how did a normal intercept turn into a nightmare on the high seas? Join us as we find out what happened to the cartel pirates who tried to hit the wrong U.S. Navy ship. They came armed, thinking a cargo ship had fallen into their hands, a big, slow ship ripe for the taking. Armed Somali pirates filled the 2 skiffs. They cut through the waves at full speed with their engines roaring across the dark waters of the Gulf of Aden. What was their target? A massive silhouette on the horizon. The said silhouette had no flag, no lights. It was just like a gigantic steel container floating quietly. In pirate logic, that usually means unescorted freight, but they couldn't have been more mistaken. It didn't take up to 90 seconds before the silhouette revealed itself before their eyes. They finally saw it for what it really was, and it was not a cargo ship at all. What was before them was a floating war fortress. Not just a U.S. Navy ship, but a full-blown nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. The kind that launches warplanes before breakfast and carries more firepower than some countries combined. The battle line was drawn. The pirates weren't ill-armed at all. They had AKs and RPGs, but the carrier was a different story altogether. There were about 5,000 sailors, Sea Whiz cannons, radar-guided missile systems, and a zero-patience policy for threats. What happened next wasn't even a standoff. There was no fight. The Navy taught the pirates a hard lesson, one that started with a warning and ended with weapons drawn and the pirates face down on a rigid hull inflatable boat, or RHIB. And this is what happens when pirates pick the wrong ship, and not just any ship, but trying to hit a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier was the mistake of the century. The radar picked them first. 2 fast-moving blips with low signature and no AIS signal were approaching at top speed. In the Red Sea, that's never a good sign. Inside the Combat Information Center of the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, the system lit up in no time. Without hesitation, the operator called out the approaching threat as they were closing in. The officer on the deck didn't need to be told twice. He leaned into comms in the flight deck to launch a Seahawk immediately. Outside the information center, the carrier was already awake. This wasn't a sleepy convoy after all. It was a full strike group on patrol, and the carrier was its nerve center, not something to be messed with. In less than 2 minutes, an MH-60R Seahawk could be seen spinning its rotors as it roared off the deck. Loaded with a door gunner, radar systems, and eyes sharp enough to ID a tattoo at 5,000 feet, it moved with precision, straight toward the incoming threat. Meanwhile, the sailors on the flight deck had paused for exactly 0 seconds. That means they've been up and about. The men in yellow shirts cleared space. Those in red shirts checked weapons load to avoid mistakes, and green shirts waved clearance for another bird on standby. In the CIC, it became clear that the skiffs were splitting. One was pulling apart while the other was still heading straight for the carrier. It was a typical pirate tactic: divide and confuse. But what did the Navy do? There was no panic at all. The captain gave a simple command. He ordered the crew to maintain course and let the pirates do what they wanted. The Seahawk, which was many feet up in the air at this point, had visual of the assault skiffs. The pilot wasted no time in calling in. He notified the crew of the hostile posture and the visible armament. And that was all the Navy needed. Because while most pirate encounters get the benefit of the doubt, this one has not only crossed the line, it has gone deep into the enemy's territory. To make matters worse for the pirates, a second Seahawk was launched. RHIB teams on the nearby destroyer USS gravely geared up. On deck, Sea Whiz spun quietly into standby. The whole ship was calm, focused, and fast. But if the pirates thought they were waiting to be attacked, then they were grossly mistaken, and they were not waiting to be attacked because on a U.S. aircraft carrier, hesitation is not protocol. Instead, it's a liability. As for the pirates, they had no idea that they were sailing into boiling water. From their own point of view, it was still just a big ship on the water. From the Navy's view, however, it was two threats closing in fast and everything was in motion. The pirates had no idea yet, but the warning shot was already locked and loaded, waiting to be fired. The skiff on the right didn't stop or change its course. It didn't even slow down. It just kept coming in with blind confidence, which was already bordering on stupidity. Having had enough, the Seahawk dropped altitude at 800 yards. Its side gunner swung the M240 into position, but there was no firing yet. The shooter simply took his posture. The posture itself was a not-so-subtle way of telling the pirates that they weren't welcome there. But did the pirates flinch? Number one of them even stood up, and with confidence, he held up something long and metallic over his shoulder. That's right, it was an RPG. And that was the trigger they needed. Hostility had been confirmed. Back on the Eisenhower, the captain didn't so little as to even blink. From the port side of the destroyer, two 11-meter RHIBs landed on the water. The vessels were packed full with Navy visit, armed to the teeth with whatever armor one can think of. These weren't diplomats, in fact. Peace is not in their dictionary. These were literal floating SWAT teams with a license to not only act fast, but to also hit very hard. Maybe the pirates didn't know this, but the carrier itself didn't need to fire a single round. That's what the task force was for. But if things escalated, Sea Whiz turrets were already humming quietly. The radar was tracking the skiff like a hawk staring at a mouse in an open field. If the carrier fires a shot, the battle may be over before it begins. While all this was going on, the pirates moved into flanking position. It was like a losing chess game. Losing indeed, because one skiff was trying to fake out two warships and a helicopter. That's not exactly a winning strategy, if it was a strategy at all. Overhead, the Seahawk's gunner gave a final visual warning. He fired a burst across the water, just in front of the skiff's bow. That was a crystal clear message. It was at this time that the pirates reacted, but it was a bit too late. The RHIB was already on them. They had their engines roaring, cutting across the surf like a scalpel blade. They showed what a real strategy looked like when the first VBSS team boxed in the skiff from starboard and the second team blocked retreat from the rear. They yelled over the loudspeaker, asking them to lay down their weapons and to hands up. Confusion arose. The panic was so great that one pirate tossed his AK into the water. Another froze, and that was a smart choice. But the others had their own plans. The Navy did not waste time, though. In less than 30 seconds, it was over. Weapons were confiscated. The pirates were zip-tied and laid on the deck of the RHIB, with their skiff being towed behind. Security had returned to the sea. But what was Eisenhower doing this whole time? The large carrier never stopped moving. Not even for a second did it slow down a little bit. Because aircraft carriers don't need to handle every threat themselves. They bring an entourage that fights back harder. It was at this point the pirates realized they'd messed up. Not only did they pick the wrong ship, they had the misfortune of picking the wrong ocean as well. They were zip-tied, disarmed, and found themselves staring at deck boots. But the Navy was far from. The thing is, when a move is made on a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier, even a small one, they don't just neutralize the threat. They investigate, document, and send a message. Because it's their belief that tomorrow's threat might have night vision, not just AKs. So while the VBSS teams hauled the suspects aboard the carrier, the second Seahawk flew a perimeter loop. The first Seahawk had done its job, now it was its turn. It was scanning thermal signatures, hull markings, even checking if that skiff had any sort of tech inside. GPS, sat phones, encrypted radio, any hint that this was more than just a bunch of amateurs. And it turned out it wasn't just some slapdash pirate crew. Back on the Eisenhower, the mood was still business. The carrier hadn't even broken formation. It hadn't missed a single step. The catapults were still launching FA-18 Super Hornets into the sky. The deck crew hadn't even batted an eyelid. If anyone was there, aside those involved, they wouldn't even know an intercept had happened unless they looked at the radar logs. And that's the thing about carriers. They don't flinch. They have no reason to. Because while pirates are out here chasing money with leaky motors and RPGs, the U.S. Navy is running a staggering 100,000-ton nuclear-powered fortresses capable of launching jets every 30 seconds and directing regional security across half the globe. But there's a twist here. Remember the second skiff? The one that veered off early? It turns out that one didn't get away either. A drone quickly spotted about 6 nautical miles out, idling near a fishing vessel that looked a little too clean to be hauling tuna. It took only a few minutes for that vessel to be swarmed by a different RHIB team from the USS Mason, another destroyer in the strike group. The result was that 2 more pirates were detained, 1 laptop was seized, and a whole bunch of questions that'll be answered in a classified tent somewhere in Djibouti. What started as a simple intercept had just peeled back a much bigger layer. But the funny part is that the original pirate crew still thought they'd attacked a normal cargo ship. That was right up until a U.S. Marine leaned over and brought them to reality. For anyone still wondering why a carrier is the worst target imaginable, here's what makes it untouchable. Here's how it is. Attacking a U.S. aircraft carrier is like bringing a butter knife to a tank fight. Except in this case, it's not just a tank. It's a floating tank capable of launching fighter jets and has its own zip code. These pirates thought they were chasing an ordinary cargo ship. But when they came face to face with it, what they actually found was the most heavily protected vessel on any ocean. First off, it should be noted that an aircraft carrier is never alone. If a pirate is just pulling up on a flat deck, he's actually pulling up on a carrier strike group, a tight formation of destroyers, cruisers, submarines, supply ships, helicopters, drones, and a sky full of fighter jets. It's basically a floating war city with a zero patience policy. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, for instance, is nuclear-powered, over 1,000 feet long, houses nearly 5,000 personnel, capable of launching fully armed FA-18s every 25 seconds. But that's all there is to the Sea Beast. Below deck, there are multiple hangar bays, maintenance shops, weapon storage, radar control rooms, intelligence centers, and that's not forgetting that it has its own internal police force. Yes, a police force on the sea. There's no inch of the ship that's not being watched, logged, and defended. Then there are weapons. The carrier has close-in weapon systems, also known as the Sea Whiz, which fires 4,500 rounds per minute. It's like a laser-guided meat grinder that doesn't ask permission. Then there's the one known as ESSM, Evolved Sea Sparrow Missiles. Anti-air, anti-missile, anti-whatever. Fast, accurate, and brutal. And one cannot leave out the MH-60R Hawk helicopters, EA-18G Growlers for jamming, or E-2D Hawkeye radar birds that can see farther than most nations even can. With this arsenal, how can one even sneak up on a carrier? If a pirate crew threatens to surprise a carrier, they get flagged, tracked, locked, and lit up before they can even pick up speed. But here's the shocking part. In this encounter, the Navy didn't even use 1/10 of what they had. They could have launched drones, fired warning flares, scrambled jets, deployed Marine detachments, or, if it got bad enough, authorized lethal force within seconds. But they didn't need to, because the threat was so far beneath their response capabilities, it was almost laughable. To put it into perspective, a single carrier strike group can control airspace the size of Texas. Yes, the massive city of Texas. That means from hundreds of miles out, they know so much about attackers. They know who they are, where they're going, and what is being carried. If they let anyone get close, it's because they want to see what such a person will do next. And if what is done next looks even slightly hostile, the game ends before it even begins. The USS Dwight D. Eisenhower has been instrumental in fencing off attacks over the years. Recently, on 30th of December 2023, Danish container ship Maersk Hangzhou issued a distress call after coming under fire from 4 small ships commanded by Iranian-backed Houthi rebels from Yemen. Attempts were also made to board Maersk Hangzhou by force, while a contracted security team defended the ship. Dwight D. Eisenhower and guided missile destroyer gravely responded to a distress call from the container ship. Verbal commands were radioed to the Houthi ships, while helicopters from Dwight D. Eisenhower were dispatched. After taking small arms fire, U.S. Navy helicopters returned fire, sinking 3 of the 4 Houthi ships. There was no damage to U.S. equipment or personnel. In the process of responding to the distress call, gravely shot down 2 anti-ship ballistic missiles fired from Yemen. On 10 January 2024, the Houthis carried out more missile attacks against U.S. and U.K. ships. All projectiles were shot down by Dwight D. Eisenhower and other ships. On 12, aircraft from Carrier Air Wing 3 embarked on Dwight D. Eisenhower, participated in the 2024 missile strikes in Yemen against Houthi rebels. Tomahawk cruise missiles were fired by the cruiser Philippine Sea, as well as the destroyers Mason and Gravely, and the submarine Florida. So trying to pirate a U.S. carrier is not just reckless, it's literally asking to be tackled by an entire team when you're holding a water gun. And the Navy wasn't even done yet, because neutralizing the threat is only one step. The next step was exploiting every mistake the enemy made. So while the pirates remained in a steel room below deck, zip-tied and silently asking themselves why they did what they did, the Navy's intel teams were already dissecting the entire gear the pirates used. That RPG launcher was taken in and scanned for origin. The laptop. Everything was scanned, and the Navy was able to dig up quite a lot of information, because the Navy doesn't just deal with pirates, they study them. Hard. In the command spaces of the USS Eisenhower, the analysts were combing through everything they could comb through: thermal footage, radio intercepts, power signatures, hull materials. Even the fuel cans got sampled for information. Of all these scratches and scabs, one strange frequency caught their attention. It somehow matched chatter previously intercepted near an illegal arms shipment from Eritrea. And just like that, a seemingly random pirate raid turned out to be part of a network, which meant the follow-up wouldn't be just an after-action report. It would be a real-time targeting package. 12 hours didn't pass before that data was already flying up the chain. CENTCOM, AFRICOM, coalition partners, intelligence fusion centers in Bahrain and Djibouti. The whole machine moved fast, because the next raid might not be with RPGs. Maybe they might come with drones next time, or smuggled man-pads. Or worse, the pirates may be unknowingly acting as bait for a deeper, hidden threat. And that's how the U.S. Navy operates. Every small contact is treated like something to test, a potential distraction, or a prelude to something bigger. So instead of swatting flies, the Navy builds a map of the entire swarm. The pirates were just the beginning. After they were caught, the real work started. Navy teams began digging into the details. Drones flew new paths. Planners quietly said the 3 words that mean a big trouble: target package confirmed. The sea looked calm again, but things had changed. The Navy was watching, and now so was everyone else. By morning, life on the USS Eisenhower was back to normal. Jets took off, people had coffee, and everything ran smoothly. But behind the scenes, a lot was going on. That messy pirate attack had set off a big reaction. Satellites moved. Strange messages were flagged. Even friendly ships nearby were warned. Because this wasn't just a warning to the pirates, it was a message to anyone else thinking about doing the same. A U.S. carrier isn't easy to mess with. America has long been at war with the Mexican cartels, who have consistently littered their country with fentanyl. However, consistent jurisdictional problems have often made it difficult for America to tackle the real challenge in Mexico. Yet, it would seem that is about to change, with rumored sightings of cartel drones trying to take out one of America's biggest gas platforms. Could this be the beginning of the end for the cartels? How will a potential United States retaliation affect its diplomatic relations with Mexico? Join us as we discuss the cartel's brazen attempt at a drone strike on a United States gas platform. Over the years, the tension between the United States and Mexico has grown stronger, and it doesn't seem to get any better. While both countries seem to have tried their best at reaching a compromise that suits both parties, the United States seems to be at the receiving end of the short stick. Although it is difficult to imagine that two countries split by a fence are at each other's throats over a jurisdictional dispute, the continuous ferrying of opioids from Mexico to the United States, which has resulted in the death of many, cannot be overlooked. While the Mexican government has had a serious go at solving the cartel puzzle they have been faced with over the years, they have consistently, visibly come up short. Unlike the United States, which does not negotiate with terrorists and just strategically takes them out instead, the Mexican government has tried diplomacy or negotiation, if you will, as a tool to convince the cartels that peace is an option. But that doesn't seem to work either. As the years rolled by, the cartels have gotten even bigger and braver in Mexico, consciously taking on the police force in their country at any chance they get. For some context, on October 15, 2019, in the state of Michoacan, Mexico, over a dozen state police officers were killed and 9 others were wounded in a running series of shootouts in the western region of Mexico, with the cartels at the very heart of this damage. According to the Michoacan State Security Department, the victims had gone to a home in the town of El Aguaje in Aguililla Municipality to issue a warrant to a suspect who allegedly has ties to the cartels in that zone when several armed civilians fired on them and set their vehicles on fire. While the federal public security reported that 14 officers were killed in the firefight, its Michoacan state counterpart reported 1 fewer confirmed death. As expected, the state governor at the time, Silvano Aureoles, attacked the action with words saying that no attack on the police would go unpunished, ergo demonizing the culprits' deviousness as they lay in wait in ambush. However, they seemed to be just words, as nothing was done to immediately make the perpetrators, who in this case were the Jalisco New Generation, or CJNG cartel, answer for their heinous crimes. But the real kicker is the message they passed, where they warned the police to quit supporting rival crime groups, including Los Viagras, and trifling with their own operations. While the large placards containing the threatening message from the Jalisco New Generation cartel, warning the police against supporting other gangs, were vivid, John Holman, a reporter from Al Jazeera, one of the world's most popular news stations, reported that it might be a misleading ploy from another gang who are leveraging the Jalisco New Generation cartel's popularity in that region to pass a message. As the years rolled by, the cartels have grown stronger and braver, willing to expand into new territories, including the United States, and hoping to dominate parts of the country with their opioids, especially fentanyl, which is at the very tip of their colonialist spear. At first, the United States did not catch a whiff of the situation for a while, but that did not last very long. Suddenly, the death toll in the United States because of opioid overdose had started to expand, and the National Center for Health Statistics had suddenly started to take account of the numerous deaths associated with fentanyl overdose. Soon, the country had become sensitized to the poison ferried into the borders of the United States from Mexico, as more people had started to lose their lives. For instance, in 2023, more than 107,000 people overdosed and died due to opioid overdose, with fentanyl being right at the epicenter of it all, taking up over 70% of the overdoses. Although fentanyl had been partially administered in the United States in quantifiable doses in the past, since a study figured out the addictive side effects, it has been removed from the list of possible prescriptions in the United States. However, with the Mexican cartels ferrying it out in large quantities, it was almost impossible to deprive addicted Americans of it. Owing to the increased death toll, the United States offered to work with the Mexican government, providing them with both intel and muscle to deal with a common problem. But geopolitics and a suspected fear of an overwhelming backlash from the cartels became a stumbling block between the two countries, and the cartels had both countries in an invisible constraint that they could rarely escape from. Having seen the continuous development of the cartel into an organization capable of drone warfare and an ability to procure mercenaries to do their dirty job while arming them with military-grade weapons, the members of Congress in the United States had started to lean into a warlike perspective, doting on the cartel's recent war with the Mexican government, where they used military-grade weapons as the perfect excuse to label them as terrorists, in a move that will justify America if they ever decide to have a military presence beyond the United States-Mexico border and extend the courtesy into the shores of Mexico. Congressman Lindsey Graham, a Republican senator in the United States, championed the cause, standing at the forefront. On March 8, 2023, he held a news conference on the fight against fentanyl and drug cartels. His legislation would designate the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. He was joined by Senator John Kennedy, another popular Republican enthusiast, who has been advocating for the same thing, upgrading the status of the cartels to terrorists. The bill was very specifically named Ending the Notorious, Aggressive, and Remorseless Criminal Organizations and Syndicates Act of 2023, or the Ending the Narcos Act of 2023. It featured 9 specific opioid cartels, which were meant to be blacklisted and treated as foreign terrorist organizations. These cartels included the Sinaloa Cartel, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, Gulf Cartel, Los Zetas Cartel, Northeast Cartel, Juarez Cartel, Tijuana Cartel, Beltran Leyva Cartel, and De la Familia Michoacana, also known as the Knight Templar Cartel. While military presence in Mexico was a byproduct of upgrading the status of these cartels into foreign terrorists, it also entailed details that made their lives and operations harder, almost impossible. What better way to stop any organization from running, criminal or not, than by stifling their money? The cartels were obviously making billions of dollars, ergo, sending fentanyl and illicit drugs into the United States, where it is killing our citizens by the thousands. Designating these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations was supposed to be the game changer. This way, the United States government could use the tools of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, popularly called the IEEPA, to regulate its economic transactions, meaning it could freeze its accounts or assets that make transactions possible. We will put the cartels in our crosshairs and go after those who provide material support to them, including the Chinese entities who send them chemicals to produce these poisons. The designation of Mexican drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations is a first step in the major policy changes we need to combat this evil, reiterated Lindsey Graham, who was all in for direct actions that throw all jurisdictional cautions to the wind. The bill portrayed a necessity to dismantle and disincentivize Mexico's cartels in every way possible, which offers the United States intelligence more tools to use in putting the cartels and their network of support in jeopardy, especially the Chinese firms that send the chemicals with which they produce their fentanyl. Although his proposition was validly run through the House, expressing concern for the safety of the United States, its citizens, and its pride, the United States government was not inclined towards granting assent to such a bill, as it could trigger a chain of jurisdictional problems that could cascade into something more sinister. Following the United States government's refusal to pass Senator Lindsey Graham's bill into law in 2023, despite the support he had in Congress, cartels across the Latin American demographic grew richer, bolder, and more armed than they used to be, with tools to fight aerial warfare, including RPGs and unmanned aerial vehicles like drones, which they fit a bomb in and aim at their targets. Fast forward to October 30, 2024. A United States Marine Corps veteran was shot dead by cartel-hired gunmen in Mexico, and his name was Nicholas Quetz. It is safe to say that it was the first time that the cartels grew ever so bold as to take the life of an American, despite the heavy-handed military response that could come with it. Could it be that the jurisdictional impasse that stops the United States from infiltrating Mexico has strengthened their resolve? Nicholas Quetz was shot to death on October 18, 2024, near a gas station between the towns of Altar and Caborca in the border state of Sonora. Local media reported that Quetz was traveling to the beach resort of Puerto Peñasco also known as Rocky Point, at the time of the attack. His vehicle may have passed a cartel roadway checkpoint just before he was terminated. However, the greatest talking point was the fact that he was not even posing a threat, which suggests the possibility that he might have been killed for sport. Although there is no evidence of how he was killed or the strategy behind it, the victim's family had consistently reiterated that he was not a part of the cartel, but he was a protector with a wide circle of friends. Ergo, dying at the hands of the cartel unprovoked at the age of 31 was enough to trigger a reaction from the United States. The conditions were nigh perfect. He wasn't the average American citizen. He was a decorated war hero who had been deployed to countries around the world, including Australia and nations in Southeast Asia. It was almost widely known that there was no coming back from this for the cartels, regardless of which one was involved in murdering a United States hero. In a turn of events, the prosecutor first did its due diligence to identify the Honduran suspect, who, like the other suspects, was not identified by his full name and had an outstanding warrant from Honduras Presidential Honor Guard. It wasn't too hard to connect the dots, since it wasn't out of character for Mexican cartels to hire former military members, some of whom even had gang affiliations from their countries, into their fold. Prosecutors said they had also arrested 2 other suspects in the killing of Quetz. One was identified as a Delta, a gang that works for the Chapitos, a faction of the Sinaloa drug cartel, one of the gangs that Senator Lindsey Graham was hell-bent on upgrading to a foreign terrorist organization. Although they remain in the hunt for the real perpetrator, working numerous angles and creating different scenarios that could lead to the real killer, they have yet to come out with a defined name as the culprit who committed the crime. However, it hasn't stopped there. The cartel seems to be on a rampage, getting hit after hit against the United States while they stay protected by the jurisdictional laws that make them untouchable for the United States as long as they are operating on Mexican soil. Enter January 2025, when the United States switched up the rules and finally decided to onboard Senator Lindsey Graham's suggestion in 2023, especially as a part of the Trump administration's Make America Great Again campaign. It would seem the United States had had enough and is willing to up the ante, declaring war on cartels across the world, especially the Latin American-based ones, like the Sinaloa of Mexico, the Tren de Aragua of Venezuela, and the Mara Salvatrucha. On January 20th, 2020, the White House released a statement designating opioid-dealing cartels and other violent organizations as foreign terrorist organizations. Owing to numerous jurisdictional rules, it was underlined as a process rather than an over-the-top approach to a quick fix for a problem that has existed for decades. This order creates a process by which certain international cartels and other organizations will be designated as foreign terrorist organizations, consistent with Section 219 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which gives authority to the Secretary of State the ability to designate an organization as a foreign terrorist organization or specially designated global terrorist, which is consistent with the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, popularly called the IEEPA, in conjunction with the Executive Order of September 23, 2001, which allows the state to block property and prohibit transactions of persons of who commits or threaten to commit or support terrorism. The cartels, which have often engaged in a campaign of violence, terror, and all sorts of asymmetric warfare, have now been put in the crosshairs and might be crossing the lines of terrorism with the new rules now put in place. The cartels functionally control, through a campaign of assassination, terror, sexual misconduct, and brute force, nearly all illegal traffic across the southern border of the United States. While the Mexican government has often reiterated that the cartels have no total control of certain demographics in Mexico, intelligence in the United States suggests that in certain portions of Mexico, they function as quasi-governmental entities, controlling nearly all aspects of society, ranging from getting protection money from surrounding shop owners, especially in Michoacan, to forcefully conscripting underage children into their guerrillas and their well-trained army of mercenaries. Having conducted proper research into these cartels, President Donald Trump declared a national emergency under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, popularly called the IEEPA, to deal with those threats. On June 19, 2025, the United States Treasury authorities applied sanctions to 5 leaders of Mexico's notorious Jalisco New Generation cartel. The U.S. Treasury Department's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, targeted the assets of Jalisco New Generation cartel leader Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, who was also known as El Mencho, and 3 of his top lieutenants, along with Ricardo Ruiz, a Jalisco New Generation cartel commander who has been implicated in high-profile murders in Mexico for more than a decade. The United States had finally turned up the heat, and the Mexican cartels have now begun to feel it. And this time, there are intelligent speculations that the cartels are planning a drone attack on one of the United States gas platforms on the Black Sea, a very similar strategy to the May 19th, 2025 Ukraine zigzag bomb-fitted drone attack on a Russian plant, which is located on the Black Seas. The cartels, who are known for a propensity to fight asymmetrical wars, even when they are the obvious weaker side, owing to their lack of strategy or military training, have reportedly decided on this mission as a result of their recent influx of mercenaries, who have real-life combat training and experience, and have also used them in a quasi-government role when they were deployed by the cartels in a firefight against the Mexican police when they apprehended Ovidio Guzman, son of a popular cartel leader. While there are speculations that the cartels might not have a means to retain a competitive combat edge against the United States in their drone war, there are recent actions that immediately oppose that. On March 11, 2025, Alexander Yan reported that Mexican cartels are ramping up their use of small strike drones, while the United States warns of the potential unilateral deployment of troops to combat drug trafficking. While the local media have released details of the incident, along with footage showing drones in action from the operator's console, taking down other drones in a firefight, the United States remains well aware of the capabilities of the cartels in recent times, especially since their evolution in recruiting mercenaries from other parts of Latin America in a bid to take over the West, where they make the most money. A drone operator from the Mexican cartel El Tena targeted a vehicle carrying fighters from the rival Jalisco New Generation cartel near the town of Chiniquila in the western state of Michoacán, Mexico. Although it was a converted civilian drone, it easily dropped a homemade freefall bomb on the opponents. The bomb was dropped accurately from a fairly high altitude, which demonstrates the operator's skill and intensifies the possibility of the operator being an ex-soldier recently recruited into the fold, or just another foot soldier in the cartel that has been trained by a mercenary. While it isn't the first time that drones have been used in cartel warfare, the improvements in how the drones are deployed and the evolution of using them for reconnaissance, intelligence gathering, and bomb drops, or even in some cases, as kamikaze drones, is a direct message to the West, telling tales of the readiness of the Latin American cartels to go into an all-out war if required. Following these consistent shows of force, the United States has continually offered military help to the Mexican government, albeit involving military presence, and the Mexican president has refused every time. As a hypothetical, should the cartels succeed in blowing up a United States gas platform on the Black Sea, will this jurisdictional impasse stop an all-out war? Whether the cartels drop a bomb as retaliation for their consistently frozen assets and arrested comrades, or simply accept defeat, only time will tell.
Left 5 degrees rudder. Left 5.
In a shocking move, Iran tried to attack a United States aircraft carrier that was sailing in international waters. This was not just any ship, it was the main vessel in a powerful strike group protected by warships and high-tech defense systems. Still, Iran went ahead with the attack. What happened next was intense. The United States reacted fast and forcefully, turning a possible disaster into a clear warning to Iran and anyone else watching. But why did Iran think they could get away with it? And how close did this come to starting a much bigger war? Join us as we break down the full story, from the moment the missile was fired to the big decisions that came right after. On March 15, 2024, The Houthis launched a surprise strike on the United States Navy's Harry S. Truman Strike Group. What followed turned into the biggest naval fight the United States had seen since World War II. At first glance, it might have looked like a clean win for the United States, but things were way more intense than they seemed. The whole thing came down to a few split seconds, and in today's battles, that is often all it takes to tip the scale between mission success and total disaster. That evening, around 6 o'clock, the strike group was on patrol about 50 miles off Yemen's coast. The fleet had the aircraft carrier Harry S. Truman, the cruiser Gettysburg, and 3 destroyers, Stout, Jason Dunham, and the Sullivans. These ships were not just floating targets. They were armed with Aegis combat systems, designed to take down incoming threats from the air or sea. Each ship held its position roughly 20 miles apart, creating a defensive net around the carrier. Then out of nowhere, radar teams on the Gettysburg and Stout picked up something strange, fast-moving objects closing in on the formation. These ships run on a system called SPY radar. It's the core sensor tech behind Aegis. This is like a giant octagon, about as tall as a 2-story house and weighing close to 12 tons, packed with over 4,000 radar modules. Each ship has 4 of these panels, giving it complete 360-degree radar coverage. It works a bit like a supercharged flashlight, but instead of light, it sends out radar waves. When those waves hit something in the sky, like a missile, drone, or aircraft, they bounce back to the ship, letting the crew know exactly what's headed their way. The SPY radar system pulls about 6 megawatts of power. That is more than enough to light up a small town. That power lets the system detect threats nearly 192 miles out. And in this case, it gave the ships just enough warning to react. Without it, things could have ended a lot worse. To break it down, this is like trying to spot a speeding car from the top of a skyscraper. It could be viewed as a car that is almost 200 miles away and flying at 3 times the speed of sound. That is basically what this radar system is dealing with out in the middle of the ocean. With that much power behind it, enough to run a few thousand homes, it sends out radar waves that bounce off anything in the sky and send data back to the ship. That early detection made all the difference. The radar on United States Navy ships does more than just spot stuff in the sky. It figures out exactly what it's looking at. The SPY system runs hundreds of thousands of calculations every second, using onboard computers to sort out what's harmless and what's a real threat. It knows the difference between a bird, a patch of clouds, or an incoming missile, and when it picks up something dangerous, it alerts the crew instantly. On that day, it picked up something they could not ignore. As soon as the radar picked up those fast-moving targets, alarms went off across the strike group. The sailors were seasoned. They had been operating in this war zone for months and had already dealt with multiple attacks. But this one felt different. What they didn't know was that the Houthis had been holding back their most dangerous weapon for this exact moment. In response to earlier United States strikes, they launched their heaviest missile yet, the ASF. It was based on Iran's Fateh 313 design, packed with over 500 kilograms of explosives and flying at nearly 2,300 miles per hour. To make things worse, this missile was built to fly low, really low. It cruised just 60 feet above the ground, and once it hit the water, it dropped to around 16 feet above the surface. That move is called sea skimming. It's a way to stay under the radar, literally by flying so close to the waves that the signal gets blocked or distorted. Like a bird gliding just above the trees to stay hidden. By the time the radar fully locked on, the ships had maybe 15 to 30 seconds to respond. That's not much time when everything's moving at over 2,000 miles an hour. The USS Gettysburg was out front, acting as the fleet's forward watch. It was the first to catch the threat. As soon as the missile showed up on radar, the screens lit up. 2 fast-moving targets were closing in. The ship's computer quickly flagged the best move. Launched the Standard Missile-6, one of the Navy's top air defense weapons. The tactical action officer didn't wait. Within seconds, 3 SM-6 fired straight out of their vertical launch tubes, cutting through the sky to take out the incoming missiles before they got too close. The Standard Missile-6 is one of the Navy's top-tier air defense weapons. It moves at over 1 kilometer per second, just quick enough to catch something like the ASF missile before it reaches the fleet. Officially, it has a range of about 240 kilometers, but a lot of defense experts say it can actually go as far as 500. It can also hit targets flying at over 70,000 feet, which means it can intercept threats while they are still a long way off. Once it is launched, the SM-6 kicks on its own radar seeker. That radar sits right in the nose of the missile and helps it zero in on the target without needing constant updates from the ship. Older missiles like the SM-2 have to rely on the ship's radar to guide them until they're close enough to strike. But the SM-6 works differently. It starts scanning right after launch. That split-second advantage matters a lot, especially when people are trying to stop something moving faster than the speed of sound. Thanks to this speed and tracking power, the SM-6 missiles were able to locate and destroy both ASF sea-skimming missiles before they could reach the ships. It was a close call, but the United States defense held strong. Just as the crew breathed a sigh of relief, things took a dark turn. This was not the end. It was just the beginning. While everyone focused on the two main missiles, the Houthis had quietly launched another attack. These were the Al-Mandab II, an upgraded version of the Houthis standard anti-ship missile, the C-802. This new version had more range, about 300 kilometers, and smarter targeting tech. With support from Iran, these missiles were upgraded to use a semi-active radar system. In the early phase, they relied on radar from land to guide them, but in the final stretch, their own onboard sensors kicked in, locking onto the ship with pinpoint accuracy. With several of these missiles flying in fast, the United States ships could not just react quickly, they had to make the right call under pressure. In naval combat, the first instinct might be to launch defensive missiles immediately, but this is precisely what the enemy wants. Here is why. Each United States destroyer has a limited number of launch cells, 96 to be exact, and these cells must serve multiple critical functions. These launch cells are like a Swiss Army knife of naval weaponry. They house different types of missiles for various purposes. Tomahawk cruise missiles for long-range strikes, Sea Sparrow defense systems for close-in protection, anti-submarine rockets for underwater threats, and standard missiles for air defense. One can think of these launch cells like a limited supply. Every missile fired is a calculated choice. Use too many too soon, and one risks running low when another threat shows up. That is exactly what the enemy wants, to force the opponent into using up defenses early and leave them exposed later. It is a tricky balance. Commanders have to weigh each launch, deciding when it is worth taking the shot and when it is smarter to hold back. In naval combat, knowing when not to fire is just as important as pulling the trigger. At most, a destroyer carries around 50 air defense missiles that are ready to launch. That might have been fine back when missile threats were rare, but since 2023, U.S. Navy ships have faced more than 170 missile attacks. And that old number just doesn't cut it anymore. What makes it tougher is that those missile tubes can't be reloaded at sea. Once they are empty, that is it. That is why the captains of the USS Stout, Jason Dunham, and the Sullivans had to stay sharp. They couldn't afford to waste a single missile. Cooperative Engagement Capability, or CEC, is a system that lets Navy ships share radar info in real time. To break it down, this is like being on a dark football field at night. Only one person has a flashlight. But if they spot something, everyone else knows exactly where to look. That is what CEC does with radar. If one ship spots a missile, it can send that info to another ship, even if that second ship can't see it directly. And that second ship can still fire and intercept the threat. This kind of data sharing turns separate ships into a coordinated defense network. Here is a real-world example. Think about how a modern power grid works. Substations across different areas are all linked up, sharing threat data as it happens. So if one station picks up on something unusual, like a sudden voltage spike or signs of a cyber attack, it doesn't just keep that info to itself. It instantly sends an alert to every connected station. Let's say a transformer station in one county picks up some strange activity, maybe unstable voltage, or someone trying to breach the system. Instead of working alone, it pushes that data out to nearby stations. Those stations can then adjust how they are operating, isolate the issue, and take action as a group, even if they haven't seen the threat firsthand. This kind of setup turns individual stations from working solo into part of a connected defense network. Just like how Navy ships share radar data, power grid substations can link up and build a full picture of what's going on. When they communicate and react as a group, they are way more effective than acting alone. It is the same concept. When everyone shares what they see, the whole team gets stronger. Whether it is defending a fleet at sea or keeping a city's power running, having that shared view is what makes the difference. The Houthis launched their first wave of missiles in tight groups, known as salvos. That actually made them easier to track and target. The United States ships followed a shoot, shoot, look, shoot approach. Fire 2 missiles, check if the threat is neutralized, and fire again if it is still coming. Each destroyer focused on a different group of incoming missiles so that no single ship used too many of its limited weapons. In this case, they used the Standard Missile 2. It does not have the range of the newer Standard Missile 6, but it is reliable and works well against older cruise missiles like the ones used in this attack. Think of it like a soccer team facing multiple incoming shots. Instead of relying on one goalkeeper to stop everything, the whole team works together. Each defender covers a specific area and takes on the threats closest to them. One might jump to stop a ball heading left, while another shifts to cover the right. They communicate fast, figure out which shots are the biggest problem, and move based on that. And if the first block does not work, someone else is already in place to finish the job. This kind of setup keeps any one player from getting overwhelmed and helps the team manage its defense smarter. Just like Navy ships coordinating during a missile attack, the soccer team turns individual efforts into a single unified defense. Everyone has a job, but they move as one to protect the goal. As the Standard Missile 2 launches, it moves at more than 3.5 times the speed of sound to meet the incoming threats. To stay locked on target, it uses a system called the Mark 99 Illuminator. These are high-powered radar beams that work like laser pointers, constantly aiming at the threat. Every few milliseconds, the radar signal reflects back, updating the missile's guidance, so it can stay on track until it either hits or destroys the target. As the missile nears its target, its internal seeker kicks in. It works a lot like the system the Houthis use, but it's quicker and more accurate. Once a hit is confirmed, the radar system immediately scans the skies again, checking for leftover debris or anything still moving that could pose a threat. If something looks suspicious, it gets tracked and targeted all over again. This cycle of spotting, firing, and reassessing runs nonstop. That's how the strike group keeps pace with rapid-fire missile attacks. One by one, the Standard Missile 2s intercepted most of the incoming missiles, leaving only a few still in the air. By then, the USS Stout was nearing the coast and running low on its top-tier interceptors. Now think about a high-pressure cybersecurity breach at a major financial institution. A complex hacking attempt hits the system from several directions at once. Just like a naval radar sorting out missile threats, the bank's digital defenses have to figure out which attacks matter most and fast. Every second counts, and the wrong decision could cost millions. Some threats hit customer databases. Others go after payment systems or try to break into internal networks. The security team has to figure out which ones to shut down first. They use specialized tools to gauge how fast each attack is moving, how much damage it could do, and whether it puts key systems at risk right now. Sometimes the right move is to deploy an advanced, high-cost security tool to stop a serious breach. It might run into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but that is still way less than the losses that could follow if core financial systems were hit. Just like Navy crews are willing to fire million-dollar missiles to save a ship, cybersecurity teams spend upfront on prevention because one missed threat could cost millions. The idea is the same across the board. High-stakes defense systems work by making fast, smart decisions based on which threats pose the most danger. Whether it's a warship in combat or a bank fighting off a cyber attack, reacting quickly and strategically is what stops things from going south. With only a few missiles left, the captain held back and went with a close-range defense system instead, the close-in weapon system, often called CWIS. It's a massive 6-barrel gun that fires 20mm rounds at an incredible rate of 4,500 shots per minute. When missiles get too close for comfort, this is the last line of defense. That is the equivalent of unloading an entire truck's worth of bullets in less than 5 seconds. The system runs on its own radar, tracks threats automatically, and reacts faster than any person ever could. As the last wave of missiles closed in, the close-in weapons system opened fire and shredded them mid-air. But there's a limit. The system only holds 300 rounds in its internal drum, which means after about 4.5 seconds, it is out. Once that happened, the crew turned to their final backup, the Mark 36 countermeasure launchers. These systems fire a cloud of hot metal into the air, millions of tiny aluminum strands that form a decoy over 10,000 square meters wide. The idea is simple. Jam the missile's radar and make it think it's chasing a real target, when it's actually locked onto nothing. Once the clouds were in the air, the wind pushed them away from the ship, drawing the last missiles off course. The enemy weapons flew straight into the aluminum cloud and dropped harmlessly into the sea. After hours of non-stop action, the radar screens finally went quiet. For the Truman Strike Group, it was a moment to catch their breath. But inland, far from the water, plans for the next attack were already in motion. This fight is not over, it is just getting started. Russia's deadly secret just took flight. NATO was completely taken unaware, while Russian engineers quietly turned their Su-57 fighter into something far more dangerous, a machine packed with sixth-generation technology that could change war forever. Is this Russia's greatest military breakthrough in decades, or the most desperate lie ever told? Join us as we find out every secret about the Russian sixth-generation fighter jet. Inside Russian airspace, 8 Su-57 prototypes have been flying missions that NATO never saw coming. These weren't ordinary test flights. According to Vladimir Mikheyev, a top advisor at Rostec Corporation, Russia has been secretly installing sixth-generation fighter components onto its existing fifth-generation platform. The testing began quietly in 2023, with new flight and navigation systems appearing on the PAKFA prototypes. Russian engineers weren't just upgrading software, they were rebuilding the aircraft's electronic warfare capabilities from the ground up. The new radar system operates as both a detection device and a reconnaissance tool, while the electronic warfare suite can track and jam enemy signals simultaneously. Over 700 test flights have validated these modifications, according to Sukhoi officials. Each mission collected data on how tomorrow's fighter technology performs in today's aircraft. The results have sent shockwaves through Western intelligence agencies. NATO's concern stems from a simple fact. Russia appears to be leapfrogging traditional development timelines. While American and European programs like NGAD and FCES are still on the drawing boards, Russia claims to have working sixth-generation components flying right now. The implications are staggering. If Russia's claims prove accurate, they've achieved technological parity with the United States years ahead of schedule. The Unified Electronic Warfare System alone represents a major advancement in combat networking, the ability for aircraft to share information and coordinate attacks in real time. But the most troubling development involves the aircraft's dual-mode capability. Russian officials have confirmed the sixth-generation platform will operate both manned and unmanned. This means enemy forces could face swarms of autonomous fighters working alongside human pilots, creating tactical scenarios no current defense system was designed to handle. The testing has also revealed advances in engine technology that could reshape aerial warfare. The new power plant delivers significantly higher thrust while consuming less fuel, a combination that extends operational range and reduces logistical vulnerabilities. This efficiency breakthrough allows the aircraft to perform supersonic maneuvers at extended distances without frequent refueling. Western analysts remain skeptical about Russia's timeline claims. The head of Sukhoi's design bureau stated the first true sixth-generation aircraft could take flight in the second half of the 2020s, suggesting current tests are preliminary rather than operational. However, the Advanced Research Foundation in Moscow has been working on multiple sixth-generation projects since 2014, focusing specifically on materials and engine development in cooperation with the consulting firm Lyulka. This parallel development track suggests Russia's sixth-generation program runs deeper than public statements indicate. The secrecy surrounding these tests has intensified geopolitical tensions. China's BIDE program and America's NGAD initiative suddenly face a competitor that may have achieved critical breakthroughs first. The global balance of air power, unchanged since the introduction of stealth technology in the 1990s, could shift dramatically if Russia's claims prove legitimate. NATO intelligence agencies are scrambling to verify the extent of Russia's technological advancement. Satellite imagery and electronic intelligence gathering have intensified around Russian test facilities, but confirming the true capabilities of these modified Su-57s remains extremely difficult. The stakes couldn't be higher. Air superiority has determined the outcome of every major conflict since World War II. If Russia has genuinely integrated sixth-generation technology into operational aircraft, the military balance that has maintained global stability for decades may be crumbling. But these secret tests revealed something far more chilling than upgraded radars and better engines. What happens when artificial intelligence takes control of warfare? Russia is secretly testing new versions of its Su-57 fighter jets, and they're not just upgrading hardware, they're experimenting with systems that let the plane make decisions without a pilot. These jets are using artificial intelligence to spot, track, and even attack targets on their own. This changes everything. In normal air combat, pilots rely on training and quick reflexes. But now these new systems can process information way faster than any human, deciding the best way to attack or dodge in just milliseconds. Tests show the AI can handle multiple enemies at once and even work with other planes during a mission. Russia's bigger plan is to pair human pilots with autonomous drones. One fighter jet could control up to 4 unmanned wingmen, flying in attack formations designed to overwhelm any defense. They're also pushing for hypersonic speeds, faster than 5 times the speed of sound. If successful, these jets could hit targets anywhere on Earth in about 2 hours. At that speed, most current defense systems wouldn't even see the attack coming. Stealth technology is also advancing. These planes aren't just hard to spot on radar, they're designed to avoid being seen by heat sensors, visual detection, and even newer surveillance systems. Russian scientists are working on special materials that help the jet blend into its surroundings. One of the most controversial parts is that these new systems can choose and hit targets on their own, without a human making the final decision. That's raising big ethical concerns around the world. While the United States and its allies are focused on keeping pilots in control, Russia seems to be racing toward full autonomy. And they're moving fast. Instead of building new jets from scratch, Russia is testing new tech on old models, which is saving them time and speeding up development. Meanwhile, Western programs like Europe's FCAS or Japan and the UK's GCAP are moving more slowly due to international partnerships and government red tape. Russia's centralized control gives it an edge in decision-making and execution. China is also in the race, working on its 6th-generation jet with different priorities, creating a 3-way global competition in future air power. These new jets won't just fight other planes, they might be able to shut down satellites, block enemy communications, and carry out a cyber attack, all without firing a single missile. In effect, they're flying computers that can disrupt entire military networks. Russia's tests show these fighters might even act like command centers in the sky, managing operations and blocking enemy responses all at once. Put simply, the mix of AI, hypersonic speed, and autonomous weapons is changing air warfare forever. Old strategies may no longer work in a world where machines fight faster, smarter, and without warning. While Russia experiments with tomorrow's weapons today, the rest of the world races to catch up. Who will control the skies of 2030? Russia's accelerated 6th-generation testing has triggered the most intense aerospace competition since the Cold War. While Western programs remain years from first flight, Moscow aims to deploy operational 6th-generation capabilities by 2030, a timeline that has defense planners from Washington to Tokyo scrambling to respond. The Russian strategy differs fundamentally from Western approaches. Instead of developing entirely new aircraft from scratch, Russia integrates advanced systems into existing platforms, validating technologies through real flight testing rather than computer simulations. This pragmatic method has compressed traditional development cycles from decades to years. America's next-generation air dominance program, by contrast, remains locked in conceptual phases. NGAD focuses on air superiority platforms designed to penetrate heavily defended airspace, but the program has faced repeated delays and budget constraints. Current projections suggest American sixth-generation fighters won't enter service until the mid-2030s, potentially 5 years behind Russian deployment. The technological gap widens when examining production philosophies. Russian defense contractors operate under centralized direction, enabling rapid resource allocation and decision-making. American programs must navigate congressional oversight, contractor competition, and bureaucratic approval processes that slow development at every stage. Europe's response has been equally fragmented. The Future Combat Air System, jointly developed by France, Germany, and Spain, aims for operational deployment by 2040. However, disagreements over work share, technology transfer, and program leadership have created delays that push meaningful progress even further into the future. Britain's collaboration with Japan and Italy through the Global Combat Air Program offers more promise, targeting service entry in the early 2030s. This program emphasizes artificial intelligence and autonomous systems, potentially creating capabilities that rival Russian developments. But international coordination challenges remain significant obstacles to meeting ambitious timelines. China's Baidu program adds complexity to global calculations. Intelligence assessments suggest Chinese sixth-generation development focuses on Pacific theater requirements, emphasizing long-range strike capabilities and carrier-based operations. This specialization could create regional advantages that complement rather than compete directly with Russian air superiority platforms. Russia's timeline advantage stems from strategic decisions made years earlier. The Advanced Research Foundation began sixth-generation research in 2014, while Western programs didn't receive serious funding until the late 2010s. This head start, combined with centralized development approaches, has created momentum that Western programs struggle to match. The implications extend beyond individual aircraft capabilities. Russia's approach integrates sixth-generation fighters into broader military networks, creating system-of-systems advantages that multiply combat effectiveness. These platforms coordinate with ground-based air defenses, satellite networks, and electronic warfare systems to create layered defensive umbrellas around strategic assets. NATO's response has evolved from skepticism to alarm as Russian capabilities become clearer. Alliance planners now acknowledge that air superiority assumptions underlying current military doctrine may become obsolete within the decade. Traditional approaches to power projection and conflict escalation require fundamental revision when facing adversaries with hypersonic, AI-enabled platforms. The economic dimensions are equally concerning for Western planners. Russia's component testing approach requires less upfront investment than developing entirely new aircraft, making sixth-generation capabilities accessible despite economic sanctions and reduced defense budgets. Western programs demand massive financial commitments that face political resistance in democratic societies. Production timelines reveal additional advantages for Russian approaches. While American F-35 programs have struggled with manufacturing bottlenecks and quality control issues, Russian incremental development reduces production risks. Modifying existing Su-57 manufacturing lines requires less infrastructure investment than establishing entirely new production facilities. The strategic implications reshape global power balances. Nations traditionally dependent on American air superiority guarantees face uncomfortable questions about future security arrangements. Russian sixth-generation capabilities could neutralize American forward deployment strategies that have maintained regional stability for decades. Middle Eastern and Asian allies are already exploring alternative security partnerships as confidence in American technological leadership wanes. Russia's successful integration of sixth-generation systems could accelerate these geopolitical shifts, creating new alliance structures that challenge Western influence. The arms race extends beyond national capabilities to include export markets. Countries seeking advanced fighter aircraft face limited options, with American platforms restricted by technology transfer concerns and Chinese systems lacking combat validation. Russian sixth-generation fighters could dominate international markets by offering capabilities unavailable elsewhere. Defense analysts warn that current Western approaches may prove inadequate for the challenges ahead. The combination of Russian technological advancement, Chinese production capacity, and Western bureaucratic constraints create scenarios where democratic nations lose aerospace superiority for the first time since World War II. But behind the bold proclamations and secret tests lies a troubling reality that exposes the true state of Russia's fighter program. What are they hiding? Despite Russia's bold claims about the Su-57 fighter jet, the facts tell a different story. 14 years after its first flight in 2010, fewer than 40 Su-57s have been produced. That's a tiny number compared to China's J-20 fighters and America's F-35s, which have been built in the hundreds and thousands. The slow production pace points to deeper problems in Russia's aerospace industry, made worse by economic struggles and Western sanctions since the war in Ukraine began. Even though production was supposed to start earlier, it only began in 2019, almost a decade after the jet's first test flight. What's even more puzzling is that the Su-57 hasn't been used in combat. Instead of being deployed in Ukraine, where Russia could use its most advanced weapons, these jets have stayed within Russian borders, used only for air patrols. This raises serious doubts about whether the Su-57 is truly ready for battle. Western experts say there are major flaws that Russia isn't admitting to. The Su-57 doesn't seem to be as stealthy as advertised, and its radar signature is bigger than that of rival jets from the United States and China. In short, it may be more like a souped-up version of older jets than a cutting-edge stealth fighter. Another big issue is the engine. Instead of using a new fifth-generation engine, current Su-57s still rely on older engines from the Su-35, which limits their performance. The new engine is still in development, leaving a gap between what Russia is promising and what it can deliver. The export market isn't buying into the hype either. Russia has only just secured its first export deal, and even that buyer hasn't been officially named. Algeria is rumored to be the customer, but the secrecy and heavy discounts being offered suggest Russia is desperate to make a sale. Even India, one of Russia's closest defense partners, has expressed doubts. Indian officials have concerns about the jet's stealth and overall performance, showing that even longtime allies aren't convinced. Russia's messaging around the jet also doesn't add up. Officials claim to be testing sixth-generation technologies now, while also admitting that actual sixth-gen jets won't be ready until the late 2020s. This inconsistency suggests either false advertising or unrealistic timelines. Meanwhile, Russia's ability to build more jets is limited. The war in Ukraine has pulled resources away from aerospace projects, and sanctions have disrupted the supply of key parts. On top of that, quality control issues and technical problems have slowed down production even more. Russia's defense budget is also feeling the strain. With money and manpower going to the war, there's little left for large-scale aircraft development. What looks like a smart approach to testing new tech may be a way to cut costs. Perhaps the most embarrassing moment came recently when Ukraine reportedly hit a Russian airbase and damaged or destroyed a Su-57. That kind of vulnerability casts serious doubt on just how advanced and stealthy these jets are. All of this adds up to one thing. Russia's big talk about sixth-generation fighters looks more like smoke and mirrors than reality. Experts believe these claims are more about saving face on the global stage than showcasing real progress. And as long as Russia remains isolated and under pressure, its ability to keep up with global military tech seems increasingly unlikely. Despite the mounting evidence of problems and delays, one critical question remains unanswered. Is Russia's sixth-generation program a revolutionary breakthrough or an elaborate deception? The evidence presents a complex picture that defies simple conclusions. Russia has undeniably conducted extensive testing on Su-57 platforms, with over 700 documented flight hours validating new systems and capabilities. These aren't paper studies or computer simulations. Actual hardware has been flying and generating real performance data since 2023. The technological components appear genuine. Advanced electronic warfare systems, improved radar capabilities, and enhanced networking functions represent measurable improvements over existing platforms. Russian engineers have successfully integrated these systems into operational aircraft, demonstrating technical competence that Western analysts cannot dismiss entirely. However, the gap between component testing and operational deployment remains vast. Installing 6th-generation systems onto 5th-generation airframes doesn't create true 6th-generation fighters. The fundamental limitations of the Su-57 platform, questionable stealth characteristics, engine performance constraints, and manufacturing quality issues cannot be overcome through software upgrades alone. The timeline analysis reveals Russia's strategic predicament. American NGAD programs target deployment in the mid-20s, while European FCAS and GCAP initiatives aim for similar timeframes. China's Baidu program follows comparable development schedules. Russia's claims of operational 6th-generation capabilities by 2030 would represent a 5-year advantage over competitors, if genuine. This timeline advantage carries enormous strategic implications. 5 years of technological superiority could reshape global military balances, potentially neutralizing NATO's conventional advantages and forcing fundamental changes to alliance defense strategies. The stakes justify significant investment in deception operations if Russia cannot achieve genuine technological breakthroughs. The production numbers tell the most revealing story. Fewer than 40 Su-57s in 14 years of development cannot support claims of imminent 6th-generation deployment. Even if Russia achieves perfect integration of new technologies, manufacturing capacity constraints limit operational impact. Advanced capabilities distributed across small numbers of aircraft provide minimal strategic advantage. Financial pressures compound these limitations. Russia's defense budget faces competing demands from ongoing military operations, while international sanctions have disrupted supply chains for critical aerospace components. The component testing approach may represent cost-cutting measures rather than innovative development strategies, suggesting resource constraints rather than technological confidence. The export market response provides another crucial indicator. Despite aggressive marketing campaigns emphasizing 6th-generation capabilities, international buyers remain skeptical. Traditional Russian defense customers, including India and Algeria, have expressed reservations about Su-57 performance and reliability. This hesitation from established partners suggests underlying concerns about program credibility. Western intelligence assessments increasingly characterize Russian 6th-generation claims as strategic deception designed to maintain technological credibility despite mounting evidence of program difficulties. The gap between public assertions and observable reality suggests a military industry struggling to maintain relevance in an increasingly competitive global market. The geopolitical context supports deception theories. Russia faces growing international isolation, economic sanctions, and military pressure from multiple fronts. Maintaining the perception of technological competitiveness serves important strategic purposes, even if actual capabilities lag behind claims. The psychological impact of 6th-generation announcements may provide deterrent value regardless of operational reality. Yet dismissing Russian capabilities entirely would be premature. The Soviet Union achieved genuine technological breakthroughs despite economic constraints and international isolation. Russian aerospace engineers possess significant expertise and have demonstrated innovation throughout decades of aircraft development. The possibility of legitimate advances cannot be entirely discounted. The most likely scenario combines elements of both breakthrough and bluff. Russia has probably achieved genuine improvements in electronic warfare, networking, and artificial intelligence integration. These advances represent meaningful progress towards 6th-generation capabilities without constituting complete technological transformation. The final verdict may depend on factors beyond pure technology. Russia's willingness to accept risks that Western programs avoid, combined with centralized decision-making processes that enable rapid resource allocation, could produce operational capabilities that exceed paper specifications. However, sustained technological leadership requires industrial capacity and financial resources that current Russian circumstances cannot support. The truth likely lies somewhere between Russian claims and Western skepticism, significant but limited progress toward ambitious goals that remain years from full realization. As the race for air superiority intensifies, a surprising new contender has entered the arena, stirring up excitement and curiosity. Sweden, better known for its neutrality than military might, has announced plans for a cutting-edge 6th-generation fighter jet. Though they haven't fully revealed the aircraft yet, this bold announcement hints at advanced capabilities that could challenge even the most powerful United States jets. The sudden announcement stunned experts, raising questions about how Sweden made this leap forward. With the U.S. locked in its costly and complex NGAD project, could Sweden's new jet challenge American air dominance? What are the capabilities of this next-generation air fighter? Join us as we explore Sweden's new 6th-generation fighter jet's capabilities and determine whether it truly stands a chance in challenging the United States competition. As nations and top aerospace giants compete for air superiority, Sweden has quietly entered the race for a 6th-generation fighter jet, standing alongside the United States, China, and other nations. Their secretive project, Flyg System 2020, is set for completion by 2035, and it promises impressive capabilities such as controlling drones directly from its cockpit, performing complex aerial maneuvers, and striking at high speeds. Though details on the capabilities of this airfighter are scarce, experts believe this advanced jet will eventually replace Sweden's reliable JAS-39 Gripen. This fighter has defended the skies for several years. Details about the Flyg System 2020 remain primarily under wraps, leaving many questions unanswered. Saab, the company responsible for developing the aircraft, has not shared much about the design or progress. However, a concept image from Saab offers a glimpse into what this fighter might become. The picture reveals a sleek, single-engine jet with a smooth, rounded body, indicating stealth technology. The design features a dual-wing setup and 2 vertical tails, likely to enhance maneuverability and reduce its visibility to enemy radar. Some aviation experts have compared the Flyg System 2020's design to China's J-20 stealth fighter. While the J-20 has 2 engines, the Swedish fighter has just 1, which could make it lighter and possibly faster. Though potentially heavier, the dual-wing configuration offers advantages like increased lift and better stability at slower speeds. According to the Aerospace Research Central, this design creates a slot effect, allowing the front wing to push air over the rear wing, boosting lift. While this might reduce speed, it can make the aircraft more stable, which could be valuable for ground attacks. Despite being a stealth fighter, the J-20 has been shown to carry a heavy load of weapons, up to 24,000 pounds, much more than the F-35's 18,000-pound limit. This has led some to wonder if the Flyg System 2020 will also balance stealth with the ability to carry significant firepower. It could be a mix of a stealth attacker and a bomb truck, capable of dropping large amounts of ordnance while maintaining a stable presence over the battlefield. Another intriguing aspect is the possibility of networking the Flyg System 2020 with other advanced jets like the F-35 or the U.S. next-generation air dominance fighter. If Sweden's new jet can connect and share data with these advanced aircraft, it could become a valuable asset in Europe's defense network, especially as F-35s become more common across the continent. The idea of controlling drones from the cockpit is another exciting feature. In the United States, this capability is considered crucial for keeping pilots safer and expanding their operational reach. Drones can scout dangerous areas, gather data, and even strike targets, all while the manned jet stays at a safe distance. Sweden's reputation for advanced technology and AI integration suggests that the Flyg System 2020 could be more than just a fighter jet. It might act as a flying command center, guiding drones to detect threats and deliver precision strikes. If it lives up to its potential, the Flyg System 2020 could significantly impact modern air combat, proving that Sweden is more than ready to compete in the fast-paced world of advanced fighter jets. On August 24, 2024, Peter Nielsen, the head of Saab's advanced programs, revealed in an interview with Dagens Nyheter that Saab is pushing forward with its plans to develop both manned and unmanned fighter aircraft. He explained that it is a good time for Saab to build a new fighter jet due to the company's skilled workforce, advanced digital engineering techniques, and experience from projects like the Gripen E fighter, the Global Eye surveillance plane, and the T-7A trainer aircraft. Addressing concerns about the costs of developing a new fighter in Sweden, Nielsen compared the situation to the 1980s, when Saab successfully developed the JAS-39 Gripen, despite doubts about its feasibility. Sweden's history of developing combat aircraft goes back to the Saab 21R, a jet version of the earlier Saab 21, which took flight in 1947. Later, the Saab 29 Tunnan, launched in the early 1950s, became Sweden's first jet with a swept-wing design capable of supersonic speed. Following this, the Saab 32 Lansen served multiple roles like attack, reconnaissance, and maritime patrol. In 1960, the Saab 35 Draken arrived with a unique double delta wing design, and the Saab 37 Viggen appeared in the 1970s, featuring advanced avionics and an afterburning engine. The most recent addition to Sweden's combat fleet is the Saab JAS-39 Gripen, introduced in the 90s. This multi-role fighter has advanced avionics, fly-by-wire controls, and a modular design. Nielsen suggested that a similar approach used in the Gripen's development, working with international partners while maintaining local control, could apply to the new sixth-generation fighter. In early 2024, the Swedish Defense Materiel Administration signed a contract with Saab and GKN Aerospace to work on future fighter concepts. This agreement requires Saab to present a demonstrator design by the end of 2025. Although not a fully functional prototype, the demonstrator will help gather data for the new combat aircraft system. Saab is also researching advanced materials, artificial intelligence, and stealth technologies, with support from the FMV, the Swedish Armed Forces, and GKN Aerospace. GKN Aerospace is playing an important role in this project, drawing from its experience with the RM-12 and RM-16 engines used in the Gripen jets. The company's center in Trollhättan received a significant investment of 59.5 million euros to expand its technology for additive manufacturing, aiming to reduce environmental impacts and support future propulsion needs. Saab and GKN Aerospace's ongoing efforts are crucial to Sweden's defense plans, but a decision about the new fighter system needs to be made before 2030. Delays could hinder Sweden's ability to adapt to changing defense technologies. Sweden is considering whether to develop its own aircraft, collaborate with other countries, or buy an existing model from abroad. Each choice has different challenges and benefits, especially with neighboring countries like Finland, Denmark, and Norway choosing the American F-35 fighter jet. Developing a completely new fighter alone could be extremely costly for Sweden, possibly limiting other defense investments. Collaborating with international partners or participating in European programs like the Global Combat Air Program or the Future Combat Air System could be more practical. However, Sweden's alignment with these programs is uncertain, as they may not fit Sweden's timeline or needs. International cooperation will likely play a role in developing Sweden's next combat aircraft. Options include integrating unmanned systems, supporting piloted jets, or building fully autonomous aircraft connected to advanced sensor networks. While the final path is still undecided, Sweden aims to balance maintaining its strong defense industry with the realities of a rapidly changing defense landscape. Meanwhile, other countries are making progressive decisions in the race for air dominance. Recently, video footage of China's new J-36 fighter jet surfaced online, showing its third test flight in just 3 months. The video, taken near Chengdu, Sichuan province, quickly spread across social media. Chengdu Aircraft Corporation, known for making advanced jets, is believed to be behind this project. This new appearance has sparked conversations about China's fast progress in military aviation, especially compared to the United States' next-generation air dominance program. The footage might hint at a major step in developing next-generation fighter jets, raising questions about China's goals and abilities. The video is a bit unclear but shows a tailless, triangle-shaped jet flying low near Chengdu's aerospace facilities. Experts believe it's the J-36 based on the serial number matching earlier sightings from December and another flight earlier this year. Interestingly, this flight happened without a J-20S stealth fighter escort, suggesting the J-36 is now stable enough to fly solo. The dramatic sunset in the video makes the event more eye-catching. But the bigger point is that this is the jet's third test flight in less than a year, hinting at a quick-paced testing plan. Military observers on X confirmed the video's authenticity, but China's Ministry of Defense hasn't officially commented yet. This activity is happening as the U.S. faces challenges with its NGAD program. Started over a decade ago, NGAD aims to replace the F-22 Raptor and F-35 Lightning II with a more advanced, stealthier fighter. The U.S. tested a prototype about 4 years ago, but the program has faced delays due to high costs, about $300 million per jet, and design issues. China's open display of the J-36 contrasts with the U.S.'s secretive approach. Some experts think the J-36 design is meant for speed, stealth, and possibly guiding drones. It has a unique 3-engine setup, which is unusual for fighter jets. Experts also believe the jet could carry advanced missiles, making it a powerful weapon. From observation, it was noted that the J-36 has a unique double-delta wing design that sets it apart from other stealth jets. Most stealth aircraft usually have to choose between speed and agility to stay radar evading, but the J-36 manages both. The two sets of wing angles serve different purposes. One controls shock waves during supersonic speeds, and the other keeps the jet stable at high speeds. By aligning the wing edges with the body, engineers have reduced its radar signature without sacrificing speed or maneuverability. This design suits modern air combat, where controlling large areas from a distance is often more important than close-range dogfights. The J-36's ability to operate at altitudes above 50,000 feet makes it even harder for enemies to target effectively. Its stealth strategy is also advanced. While older jets mainly focus on avoiding head-on radar detection, the J-36 uses all-aspect stealth, reducing radar visibility from every angle. Its weapons are stored internally, maintaining a smooth shape that minimizes detection while still carrying a strong arsenal of advanced missiles. Unlike traditional fighter jets with vertical stabilizers, the J-36 makes use of advanced computer systems for stability. Without tail fins, it glides almost silently, making it extremely difficult for radar to detect. A ghost in the sky that has left military experts both impressed and wary. Its streamlined shape also reduces drag, allowing it to stay in the air longer and cover more ground. These features give China a possible advantage in future air battles, potentially challenging the dominance of other air forces. This nation's choice to test the J-36 openly might be a strategy to show its strength to the world. The first test flight happened on Mao Zedong's birthday, a meaningful date in China, and was followed by a second prototype from Shenyang Aircraft Corporation. These public displays could be China's way of showing that it's not just keeping up with the West, but maybe even surpassing it. Meanwhile, the U.S. is feeling the pressure. The NGAD program, meant to create a network of jets with advanced AI and stealth, faces questions about its cost and practicality. Some American defense leaders believe China's fast progress should push the U.S. to invest more in its programs. A report from the Pentagon in 2024 highlighted that China's Air Force is modernizing so quickly that it could soon challenge U.S. air power in areas like the South China Sea or Taiwan Strait. This pressure has led to the United States making quick decisions about their 6th-generation air fighter. The U.S. Air Force has announced plans to produce its new F-47 next-generation air dominance fighter jet. The announcement of the United States Air Force's new 6th-generation fighter jet, the F-47, has sparked plenty of discussion worldwide, especially from Chinese military experts. U.S. President Donald Trump recently confirmed that Boeing will lead the production of this advanced aircraft, which aims to replace the F-2020 Raptor and maintain American air superiority. According to Defense News, the F-47 will have impressive stealth features, making it nearly invisible to radar. It will also be capable of flying alongside unmanned drones, known as collaborative combat aircraft. The official renderings from the U.S. Air Force reveal a tailless, flat-nosed design with a lifting body fuselage, which aligns with current ideas about 6th-generation fighter jets. Zhang Shuifeng, a Chinese military expert, noted that the F-47 lack of vertical tails improves stealth from all angles. However, he also pointed out the presence of canards, small forward wings, which could reduce the aircraft's stealth abilities. These canards are considered older technology, often used in previous generation jets. Zhang suggested that Boeing might lack the advanced technology needed for new flight control methods, which could explain their reliance on older design choices. Wang Yanan, editor-in-chief of Aerospace Knowledge magazine, questioned whether the F-47's relatively small size would limit its abilities. Unlike the large versatile aircraft seen in China's rumored sixth-generation fleet, the F-47 appears to be a tactical fighter focused more on specific missions. Wang also raised doubts about Boeing's ability to lead this project successfully. He noted that Boeing's last major fighter jet project, the X-32, lost to Lockheed Martin's F-35, and the company has faced setbacks with other projects like the KC-46 tanker and the 737 MAX airliner. Despite these concerns, the United States seems to be ahead in the race for a sixth-generation fighter. The Air Force has claimed that test versions of the F-47 have been flying for the past 5 years, although there is no solid evidence of this. Still, with the F-47 now officially in development and China's mysterious jets already spotted, the world is closely watching the competition between these two major powers. The United Kingdom, Japan, and Italy are also working together on the Global Combat Air Program, aiming to launch their new jet by 2033. However, some lawmakers worry that China's progress might force them to speed up their efforts. Meanwhile, France, Germany, and Spain are developing the Future Combat Air System, but their progress is slower. Russia's MiG-41, another next-gen fighter, is still in its early stages. What makes China stand out is its ability to create not just one, but two possible sixth-generation jets, the J-36 and a design from Shenyang Aircraft Corporation. However, it's unclear how close these jets are to actually being combat-ready. Some experts think China might achieve operational capability before the USA's next-generation air dominance fighter, but American officials believe the U.S. still has an edge in technology. Justin Bronk from the Royal United Services Institute described the jet's early flights as fascinating and believes it could change air combat strategies if paired with China's expanding drone fleet. However, there is still a lot we don't know about the jet's capabilities. The term sixth generation itself isn't clearly defined. Generally, it means the aircraft should have features like advanced stealth, drone coordination, and even directed energy weapons. Both China and the US are investing heavily in these technologies. What's surprising is how quickly China is testing this jet. The J-47 has been seen flying 3 times in just 3 months, which is unusual for such an advanced project. Typically, test flights are spread out over years. This rapid pace suggests that there may have been unreported tests before the public sightings. The first flight had a chase plane following the J-47, which is common for early tests, but the recent flights have been solo, suggesting greater confidence in the jet's performance. Many experts didn't expect China to have a sixth-generation jet ready this soon. In 2021, analysts predicted the first Chinese sixth-generation fighter would appear around 2028. This accelerated timeline could mean that China has made major breakthroughs, or it might be a move to show off its power quickly. Beyond technology, the J-36 could have serious strategic effects. If a conflict breaks out over Taiwan or the South China Sea, a stealthy long-range J-36 could make it harder for the US and its allies to plan their defenses. Combined with China's growing missile capabilities, this could challenge the balance of power in the region. The US is not ignoring this threat. The Navy's FA-20 program is meant to replace the aging FA-18 Super Hornet, but there is no publicly confirmed prototype yet. Meanwhile, China's fighter jet production already matches US output each year, according to aviation sources. If China can mass-produce the J-36, it could have a significant impact on future conflicts. The United States also has the upgraded F-22. Lockheed Martin recently conducted 6 successful flight tests to enhance the F-22 Raptor stealth fighter. The U.S. Air Force plans to keep the F-22 effective until the 2040s through upgrades like a new infrared defensive system, advanced sensors, and stealthy range-extending drop tanks. At the Air and Space Forces Association's 2025 Warfare Symposium, Lockheed Martin shared updates about these improvements. Currently, the Air Force has just over 180 F-22s, with 32 used only for testing and training due to their older configuration. While specific details about the advanced sensors weren't disclosed, stealthy underwing pods seen on Raptors likely support an infrared search and track capability. So far, the J-36 hasn't received much attention from the public in the United States, with most discussions happening in niche military and aerospace communities. Some online users think the jet could change air combat forever, while others believe the U.S. still has a strong advantage thanks to its secretive, cutting-edge research. China might be taking space warfare to the next level, and the United States is not ignoring it. Reports suggest that Chinese satellites could be equipped with lasers powerful enough to disrupt or even disable American satellites, raising concerns about the future of space security. Experts are scrambling to determine the full extent of this threat. Could these lasers blind critical sensors, knock out communication systems, or even impact military operations on Earth? And what does it mean for the growing power struggle beyond our atmosphere? Join us as we break down the facts, the concerns, and where things could go from here. China is increasing its efforts in space warfare, and the United States is taking notice. Reports indicate that China is working on ground-based laser weapons that could interfere with or even damage critical sensors on American and allied satellites. These satellites play a vital role in military communications, global positioning systems, and missile warning systems. If China successfully disrupts these space assets, it could shift the balance of power and put the United States in a more vulnerable position, both during periods of peace and potential conflicts. This is a serious issue because satellites are not just used for military operations. They also support everyday services, such as the internet, weather tracking, and global positioning. United States military officials, especially those in the Space Force, have not been shy about their concerns over China's rapid progress in space warfare. They say China's advancements are shocking and could seriously threaten the satellite networks that the United States military relies on for global operations. Unlike missiles that destroy satellites and leave behind debris, laser-based attacks do not create any physical remains in space, making them much more challenging to detect and trace. This makes it even more difficult for the United States to respond to such attacks. These ground-based lasers work at lower power levels and are designed to interfere with satellite sensors. These satellites use optical cameras, infrared detectors, and radar systems to monitor Earth, track missile launches, and gather intelligence. When a laser hits a satellite's sensor, it floods it with light or heat, making it temporarily unable to capture images or collect data. Think about a United States military surveillance satellite passing over the South China Sea, keeping an eye on Chinese naval movements. If China targets it with a laser from the ground, the satellite's sensors could be overwhelmed with bright light, making the images blurry or completely unusable. This disruption could last for several minutes, or even longer, depending on how long the laser stays active. During that time, China could conduct operations without adequate monitoring. One important thing to note is that these lasers do not physically damage satellites. Once the laser is turned off, the sensors return to their regular operation. That makes this an appealing option for countries like China that want to interfere with surveillance or intelligence gathering without actually destroying space equipment or escalating into direct conflict. In some ways, it works like military aircraft using smoke or camouflage to stay hidden from satellites. But instead of cover, it uses concentrated light energy. These high-powered lasers are just one piece of China's strategy to challenge the United States in space without sparking direct conflict or war. They give China control over when and where American satellites can capture information, effectively shaping the battlefield in space. For the United States, this means ramping up efforts to make satellite sensors more resilient, developing technology to recognize when lasers are being used against them, and ensuring backup systems are in place to keep operations running when key satellites are disrupted. China's laser systems do more than just block satellite cameras. They can also interfere with the signals satellites use to communicate with Earth. These signals control everything from military operations to everyday services, such as satellite internet, weather updates, and global positioning. If a strong enough laser hits a satellite's communication equipment, it can mess with how that satellite sends and receives data, leading to outages or distorted information. For example, imagine a U.S. military satellite coordinating navigation and targeting data for aircraft in the Pacific. If China uses a ground-based laser to jam or scramble the satellite's communication signals, the aircraft, depending on that information, might lose precise navigation or receive delayed targeting data. Even a brief disruption can create confusion during critical operations, affecting military readiness or effectiveness. These laser attacks are not just a military issue. Civilian systems could also be impacted. A laser interfering with a weather satellite could delay storm warnings, and disruptions to global airline tracking could create serious logistical problems. While China is likely focusing on military advantages, the effects could spread to everyday services, mainly since many nations depend on the same space-based infrastructure. For the United States and its allies, this means intensifying efforts to safeguard communication systems against interference. That could involve deploying extra backup satellites, reinforcing antennas and receivers, or even developing new materials that can resist laser attacks. With information moving at the speed of light, keeping communication lines secure is just as critical as defending physical borders. The biggest concern with these lasers is their growing power. Instead of just blocking or interfering with signals, newer versions are being built that can physically damage satellites. Experts predict that by the middle to late part of the decade, China could have high-power lasers capable of disabling key satellite components, such as sensors, antennas, and solar panels, rendering them completely useless. Unlike temporary disruptions, this kind of damage would be permanent. Think of a United States reconnaissance satellite passing over a high-priority area. If China hits its sensor array with a powerful laser, the intense heat could melt or crack the delicate optical components, making the satellite unable to capture images or collect intelligence. Another strategy could be to target the solar panels, cutting off the satellite's power source and slowly draining its battery until it is completely unusable. This kind of quiet, precise attack can disable a satellite without using missiles or creating space debris. These attacks create a serious challenge because they do not leave behind wreckage or apparent destruction. A satellite could suddenly stop working, and it might take days or even weeks for operators to figure out what happened. Was it a technical issue? Did a laser target it? Determining the cause would be challenging, which would make it difficult to respond, whether diplomatically or militarily. This uncertainty is why many military experts are concerned. The threats are real, but the signs are not always easy to spot. To address this growing threat, the United States and its allies are focusing on making satellites more resilient to attacks. This includes using tougher materials that can withstand extreme heat, building satellites with enhanced shielding, and deploying backup networks of smaller satellites that can take over if one is compromised. The United States Space Development Agency is rolling out small satellite constellations, such as the proliferated warfighter space architecture, to enhance space operations. Instead of relying on a few large, high-cost satellites that could be targeted, this system distributes key functions, such as missile warning and secure communications, across multiple smaller satellites. That way, if one or two get damaged, the rest can still operate and keep the network running. This approach, combined with new materials designed to withstand heat and radiation, is part of a larger strategy to remain resilient against laser and cyber threats in space. China has developed several laser systems as part of its anti-satellite strategy. One of these is the Low-Altitude Laser Defending System, initially designed for counter-drone operations. The most notable aspect of the Low-Altitude Laser Defending System is that it is already in use outside of China, particularly in Russian service. This shows that it is not just an experimental system. It has reached a level where it can be exported and integrated into foreign defense strategies. If Russia is deploying it, that signals broader interest among China's strategic partners in laser-based weapons, whether for protecting military assets or disrupting surveillance. China's Silent Hunter laser system is making waves globally. It is an upgraded version of the earlier Low-Altitude Laser Defending System, originally designed to counter low-flying drones. Silent Hunter is available in both fixed and mobile models, allowing it to be mounted on trucks and relocated as needed. While its main job is detecting, tracking, in destroying drones, its power levels, ranging from 30 to 100 kilowatts, make it capable of much more. For example, at 800 meters, it can burn through 5 2mm steel plates. Even at 1,000 meters, it can still cut through 5 millimeters of steel. Because the Silent Hunter is large and heavy, it cannot be mounted on aircraft or smaller mobile platforms. However, it has already been put to use on the ground. Saudi Arabia has deployed these systems to defend against Houthi drones and missiles, positioning them alongside truck-mounted radar designed to detect low-flying threats. At least 8 Silent Hunter units have been spotted in action, giving nations a reliable tool to take down drones before they can cause damage. Because Silent Hunter is large and heavy, it cannot be mounted on aircraft or smaller mobile platforms. However, it has already been put to use on the ground. Saudi Arabia has deployed these systems to defend against Houthi drones and missiles, positioning them alongside truck-mounted radar designed to detect low-flying threats. At least 8 Silent Hunter units have been spotted in action, proving that this system is more than just a concept. It is actively being used in modern battlefield defense, giving nations a reliable tool to take down drones before they can cause damage. The Silent Hunter has been making waves at defense exhibitions around the world. It first appeared in 2017 at the International Defense Exhibition in Abu Dhabi, then showed up again in 2018 at Kazakhstan's International Exhibition of Weapon Systems and Military Equipment. More recently, its Air Force variant caught global attention at the Zhuhai Air Show in 2022. With its high-powered capabilities, real-world deployment, and growing international interest, it is one of the most talked-about laser weapons, sparking big discussions about the future of laser warfare. Reports indicate that China is developing a high-powered microwave weapon, often referred to as the Death Star laser. Chinese scientists claim they have made a breakthrough in creating a real-world version of the superweapon from Star Wars. This system works by combining multiple small electromagnetic waves into a single powerful energy beam. Imagine combining several flashlights into a single intensely bright beam, but instead of lighting up a room, it is designed for military use. The key advancement here is the ultra-high time precision synchronization, which ensures that the smaller beams align perfectly at the exact moment, allowing for highly accurate strikes. What makes this breakthrough even more impressive is the level of precision the Chinese team has reached. They have managed to synchronize these beams with timing accuracy beyond even atomic clocks, the gold standard for measuring exact time. To achieve this, they control the time separation between beams to less than 170 picoseconds, which is faster than 1/1,000,000th of a second. They pulled this off using advanced optical fiber technology, which lets light and energy move at incredible speeds without losing focus or strength. With this breakthrough, reports indicate that China's energy weapon has successfully passed military testing. Officials claim it could now be used to disrupt or even disable signals from American satellite systems, including the Global Positioning System. This is a big concern because satellites are critical for military operations, navigation, and global communication. Scientists also say that when multiple beams combine, the total power is even stronger than expected, meaning this weapon could have a much bigger impact than initially thought. These energy weapons are explicitly built for space, not for use on land, at sea, or in the air. But that doesn't make them any less critical. Space warfare is becoming a growing focus, and China has been developing advanced energy weapons for years. This project is just one part of a larger trend, including reports last year about a brain-disrupting weapon designed to target foreign military and government officials. Taken together, these developments indicate a shift toward next-generation weapons that could significantly alter global security, with consequences extending far beyond Earth. The Pentagon recently confirmed that it had formally protested to China after multiple incidents where Chinese military personnel aimed powerful lasers at United States aircraft near Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. This base sits less than a mile from China's new military facility in the region, making it a tense area. One of the most serious cases involved 2 U.S. Air Force pilots flying a C-130 Hercules transport plane. They suffered minor eye injuries from a laser strike, experiencing dizziness and lingering bright rings in their vision even after landing. In response, the U.S. has now implemented a policy requiring all pilots to wear protective eyewear when approaching the Chinese base. A bright laser hitting a windshield at night can cause temporary blindness and increase the risk of an accident. In aviation, this risk is particularly magnified for pilots flying at high altitudes, where sudden disorientation can be particularly hazardous. Flashing lasers at aircraft is not just a military concern, it has also become an issue in civilian aviation, leading to temporary vision loss, eye injuries, and cockpit confusion that can jeopardize flight safety. Lasers don't just pose a risk to human vision, they can also damage sensitive equipment. According to Chinese military analysts cited in the South China Morning Post, these lasers may have been used to interfere with U.S. surveillance drones operating near the Chinese base. These drones rely on advanced electro-optical sensors, which are particularly vulnerable to laser strikes. Meanwhile, official Chinese media have dismissed the claims entirely, suggesting no such harassment occurred. There is also the possibility that these laser incidents were the result of individual personnel acting without formal authorization, adding another layer of uncertainty to the situation. In 1995, China's Norinco company introduced the ZM-87 portable laser disturber at arms expos in the Philippines and the United Arab Emirates. This 15 milliwatt neodymium laser, capable of firing 5 pulses per second, was designed to inflict permanent eye damage on enemy troops up to 2 or 3 miles away or cause temporary blindness at distances of up to 6 miles. Weighing 77 pounds, mounted on a tripod and powered by a thick cable, the ZM-87 stood out as a striking piece of battlefield technology. A soldier using binoculars at a military outpost 2 miles away could be at serious risk if targeted by the ZM-87 laser. The concentrated beam could damage the retinas in seconds, causing permanent blindness before the soldier even registers the attack. Even at distances up to 6 miles, the intense light could overwhelm vision, leading to temporary blindness and preventing the soldier from using equipment or calling for support. The introduction of the ZM-87 immediately raised concerns across the world. That same year, the 1980 Geneva Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons was amended, leading to the creation of the Protocol on Blinding Laser Weapons. This international agreement, signed by both China and the United States, explicitly bans the use of lasers intended to cause permanent blindness. Although the protocol wasn't officially enforced until 1998, the growing threat of laser weapons was already apparent, and global leaders were rushing to establish regulations before these technologies became more widespread. The risks of laser weapons had already gone beyond borders. Before the protocol took effect, Norinco had produced at least 22 ZM-87 units, and some were sold internationally. One of the most alarming incidents occurred on April 4, 1997, when a Canadian military CH-124 helicopter flew close to the Russian ship Kapitan Man, suspected of being a spy vessel off Washington's coast. As the helicopter hovered nearby, both the Canadian pilot and a U.S. Navy intelligence officer on board suddenly experienced severe eye pain and temporary blindness, believed to be caused by a ZM-87 laser fired from the ship. While no laser was officially confirmed, neither man fully recovered, underscoring the growing threat of laser weapons in modern warfare. In 2023, 2 U.S. Apache helicopters flying near the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea were suddenly hit by a laser. Intelligence officials suspected it was a Chinese-made ZM-87 laser dazzler, possibly acquired by North Korea. While the protocol on blinding laser weapons bans lasers designed to permanently blind people, it does not cover cases where blindness happens unintentionally due to lasers meant for disabling equipment. For instance, China's Type 99 main battle tank is equipped with a laser system intended to interfere with enemy targeting sensors. However, if the beam hits a soldier's eyes, it could still cause serious harm. China and the United States take a specific approach to international laser regulations. They do not classify lower power dazzler lasers, which only cause temporary blindness, as banned weapons. The United States and Britain have used dazzler systems like glare mount and glow in Iraq and Afghanistan as non-lethal deterrents. These devices emit intense light into the eyes of drivers approaching military checkpoints at high speed, compelling them to slow down or stop without resorting to lethal force. While this method helps manage tense situations without gunfire, there is still a risk of temporary eye damage. Looking ahead, space is no longer just an unexplored frontier. It is becoming a battlefield where lasers, satellites, and advanced weapons are influencing global power dynamics. China's rapid advancements in space warfare are prompting the United States and its allies to reassess their strategies for protecting critical space assets, ranging from military satellites to everyday communication systems. As technology continues to evolve faster than international agreements can adapt, the coming decade will likely shape the future balance of power in space. Thanks for watching. While you are still here, click on the link on your screen to check out another of our videos. See you there.